now. I just have to pull up this email and I'm all good to help me out with this. But welcome to Executive Affairs. Today on the agenda, we're basically trying to formulate some subcommittees to help us focus on the work that is in front of us. It's always been in front of us, but now is the time frame, and it's not even desire or need, it's an absolute urgency that we get all this together, considering everything we've been hearing, especially around cuts and, you know, our charters and the monies that's coming out of our charters. We got to get to the bottom of a lot of these things and handle it.
A bunch of
So,
kids. Children.
Yeah, I mean, this is the effect that this is having. It's not a finger pointing game, and this is, I don't know what the narrative is that everybody else has been saying to folks that they talk to, but you know, it's the board's fault, it's the district's fault, it's the teacher's fault, it's everybody's fault. But you know, trying to center folks around what we need to do together as, you know, parents, guardians, district board members, whatever, board members who are parents, like that people need to see the Board of Education working with the district in a unified manner to get these situations under, you know, at least where people know they can focus some of their questions, and board members can work on, you know, their strengths. So did everybody get a chance to check the email out at the proposed kind of subcommittees and what we're looking to accomplish?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna just kind of, because I don't have it in front of me and my phone is acting up, of course, because the timing is perfect for it to do so. But the three committees are, you know, exactly what we've been talking about for how long. And I feel like, and I'm only speaking for myself, that when you're answering to your constituents and you're hearing everything that's coming at you is falling under, you know, this type of work. So whether it's, you know, the monies around what we need to have, the resources that aren't in place or that are in place that haven't been put, that's been late to the take, some of the OT, PT, things like that, you know, those folks are just now getting on. It's not a district's fault or whatever. It's just a matter of putting things, you know, together right without having to rush into things and then have to pull back because there's some legalities behind it. So the first group, that they're not in any particular order. And again, this is not just me coming up with some ideas. This was working with the district, talking with President Kottman, Vice President Rivera. These are the kind of categories where we're looking at. So one of them being more financial, you know, federal funding, the state funding, the cuts in front of us, the grants, like where are there opportunities for us to be able to fill in some of these gaps. I'm particularly concerned, this is Jen talking, this isn't anybody else, but I'm particularly concerned with this, with the narrative around this, this mutual bank account that we have with the city. I'm concerned that there is funding being taken out of our budget from the state as is, and then to be promised that this is going to be returned with state monies to the city once they borrow from us. That's the narrative I get. And if they don't have it for children, I don't see them being able to have it for the city. And where's like a promissory note or something stating that if you don't get money, how are we going to get paid back? So to me, it may be something that might have been covered, but I just want it real clear because I kind of skirt those questions. And that's just one piece of the financial. How are we going to lobby? What are we going to do? So that's one committee of folks. The charter schools, right? What are we gonna do? This financial situation is gonna put us in a worse place than we've already identified we're gonna be in. And how do we deal with that? And we have some really strong folks on the board who concentrate on charter, who know all the ins and outs about the charters and how this works, public, private. Like, this is supposed to be kind of a smooth relationship, and we're supposed to, the way it's supposed to be, rosy pictured, charters and public are supposed to get along and come together in order to create new innovative ideas for our children. And it just seems like a lot of our public education money and funding ends up in spaces where we can't even track it, and we don't know how to deal with that when it comes to the children that are in those schools and those that come back. So there's that bucket of work. And then also this remote learning, right? So how do we make sure that this remote learning and whatever summer school comes up, like talking about that in this, better remote learning, getting all our resources to everyone, making sure we have fast connect internet, just being smarter about it, and where we concentrate on the whole child, like we've been focusing on for, some years now. And with the new board members, the whole child focus and equity has always been where we go with this. So these are the three committees. Obviously, there's going to be more that falls into these three kind of buckets of work, but now's the time to kind of talk through it and see where we want to go and who wants to concentrate on what and what these committees will look like. Once we formulate that, the quicker we can do that and set like a set structure for these three. And then also recognizing that if we don't have 3 board members for one and 3 for that perfect scenario doesn't work, that we all know we still have insight into each of these committees. If you're working with the charters, that doesn't mean that's the only focus that you have, right? Everybody should be kind of updating and whatever and helping other people out. I don't know who that is with that. I don't think it's me. But I'm just kind of leaving it at that. So this is just a suggestion, and as a board, we should talk this through. So the floor is open. You have your raise your hand, button there, and I'll try and use that for the stack. But ready, set, go. How do we deal with this? Okay, Hope, I saw your hand, and
Larry's.
let me see. Okay, Larry, did you have yours first? I put my head down for like a millisecond. I think I lost somebody.
I think Lou had his up first.
Okay, so would I be right that it would be Lou, Hope, and then Larry, or are you after Lou, Larry? Because I missed that 1 second.
If we're being technical, it looks like I'm after Lou, then Hope, then Ann.
All right, thank you so much for that. Go ahead, Lou.
All right, well, thank you. Jenna, I truly like the idea of the subcommittees. We have a ton of work to do. It's a very challenging time. I think that I would like to refine the form of the subcommittees a little bit further though. Federal lobbying has always been really tough, simply because our delegation tends to stand behind us. So yeah, I mean, we can talk to Higgins, we can talk to Schumer, Gillibrand. They're behind us. They're not the problem. It's the people at the federal level that don't believe that they should be throwing any money at school districts. School districts are local. They should be funded local. The federal government should stay out of everything. And when you have a Republican-controlled Senate and you have large sections of the country controlled by Republicans, it's a really difficult ask. It's not like we can just go to DC and start asking money or writing the level. I just think I appreciate it. We need it. I know that in the $3 trillion bill that was proposed today in Congress, Buffalo was poised to get $2 billion of that in direct aid to various programs. But it becomes like a really tough ask at the federal level. And I'll give you an example. So in the third phase of the federal funding, they gave a ton of money to local governments, but it came in CDBG funds. So you can only use it for community development block grants. It wasn't direct funds that you really need for police or firemen or school districts or those other things. So it's not only the ask, it's what we're going to do in the ask. One thing that I would stress is that I would take that finance and probably break it down into budget, how we are going to come up with those cuts. If we do lose 10% or 5% or 10%, how are we going to address those things and still try and maintain equity, quality of instruction, etc. That also ties into our whole child continuity of education, distance learning, everything else. Ties into the charters also. The other thing too is that, and I want to stress, is a lot of things that are in place right now, a lot of the relief that they've offered, we may need going forward because some of the legislation that they have that prevents us from doing things. So do we want to talk about relief from joint schools construction so we can close or consolidate some of those schools, because presently we can't close them down without penalty? Maybe it's something with transportation aid. Maybe it's seat time. All those things are on the table, but we really would have to drill down and find out specifically what type of relief we're asking for. We're not going to get any additional money from the state, but we may get some relief. I'm cautious though, because Cuomo's made a deal with the devil, and asking for relief may mean that he wants to, yeah, we'll give you relief from this, but we also want relief so we can do all distance learning, or so that we can turn over the education to a private partner like the Gates Foundation or something along those lines. So we just have to tread lightly. But there are, I believe, areas where we could request relief from Albany that would go a long way to help solve our financial problems that are predicted, and will give us some additional flexibility to offer the type of quality instruction that we all want. So that was it. As part of this also, I would suggest that we make a full-fledged lobbying effort where we do a survey of the board, see who knows what member of the Western New York delegation, come up with a plan as to what we're going to ask, figure out how many contacts we're going to make, who's going to contact them, how often, what the specific ask is, et cetera, like a really granular, detailed type of plan. I think we're at that juncture during all this, because I think things are going to move pretty quickly between now and the next few weeks, a few months, because they have to, and it's all of us. I mean, it's all of us together. Just we're a little bit unique. There are certain things I know, Big Five is great. Council of Great City Schools are great. National School Board Association, all great. All people that are lobbying on our behalf. But there are certain specific things to the district that we should do. No disrespect to any of the groups or organizations that we belong to. We still need them to be our partners. But specific things that impact us, like a disproportionate number of charter schools, like the joint schools construction, or a few other things that are Buffalo specific, that we really need to kind of, I'll say muster all of our resources and focus on. And I'll be quiet for a while.
No, I mean, so I don't know if anybody else saw this, but Lou kind of laid out the work for that financial committee. It's not really, it's breaking down in that committee the work that needs to be done. You see what I mean? So I think that you kind of, maybe not even knowing it, broke down the work that would end up in that committee and eventually end up in the other committees as well, because it all ties together. So we can look into that more. Next up is Larry. And Sharon, did you have your hand up as well? I didn't see the hand raise on the thing, but I thought I saw it like this.
Yeah, I did want to comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I got you after Ann. Go ahead, Larry.
Okay, so I want to agree with Lou, and I think what Lou is kind of emphasizing is that we need to broaden this committee out to include not just federal funding, but state funding and city funding, and that relationship that we have with the city. And I think two things I want to emphasize right now. Shelley Mayer, Senator Mayer, the education chair for the state Senate, is sponsoring a bill called Shares, where she is asking for a millionaire's tax, a temporary millionaire's tax, that would be then invested in K through 12 education and higher education. In my opinion, I think this is something that we as a board, and if we form a committee today, I think needs to jump on tomorrow to start contacting our local delegation to get them on board and to sponsor this bill. I also heard, and I wasn't able to find it before the meeting, but I heard that an assembly member or two were sponsoring a bill that would prevent Governor Cuomo from making any further reductions in education aid for this coming school year. So that's another one I think that we need to be cognizant of and jump on as well. I see the funding committee and the charter school committee probably working pretty closely together. I'm most interested, if I had to pick one in the charter school committee. And I see at the start 3 focuses. Number 1, new charters. We have 3 right now that are on the docket going before the New York State Board of Regents, and we have 1 that's before SUNY, Charter School Institute. And then number 2, looking at the renewals. I think we have a few renewals that are also coming up before the Board of Regents. And then lastly, and most importantly and more long-term, the state legislature, and getting our state legislator, local delegation on board with addressing the amount of charter schools in Buffalo, in upstate. Mr. Pritchard shared some information with us recently that showed that New York State currently has a cap on charter schools. And right now they're at 14% charter schools. Buffalo right now is at 27% and growing. And if we continue on this pace, I think Jeff projected that we would be at 50% of charter schools in 10 years in Buffalo. It's inequitable, and the only way the Board of Regents discussed this in their last meeting, that this is something that the state legislator and state government needs to take on, because right now there isn't a cap for Buffalo, and so that's where these charter providers are turning to, Buffalo, Rochester, other upstate districts, because they can no longer start a charter in New York City. So we need some real action from our state government to address this and stop this bleeding of our public funds to these private entities in these charter schools that ultimately is hurting everybody, even the existing charter schools in Buffalo.
Okay, Hope, I believe, was next.
Hi, Jen. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. So I have a lot of questions. You know, I only reviewed the email and I saw Nate's response. I haven't talked with anybody else, you know, about this. So let me just see if I understand where, like, the genesis of this and what it is you're looking to accomplish, okay? Because I'm a linear thinker. I have to understand that first, okay? So it seems to me that you are looking to try to develop these focus groups that are addressing these 3 broad issues that seem to kind of have been brought to the surface in the aftermath of COVID. Am I following you?
Yeah, not just the aftermath now especially, but these are things that we should have really been, not should have, but it's something we should have been focusing on as groups and as board members previous, and now it's kind of in our face.
But we're in an emergency kind of a status when dealing with the funding issues, dealing with the charter school issues, and of course, you know, we got pushed into a whole new realm and a whole new world with this remote learning, and those were the three topics that I see you wanting to address, right? So we're trying to be proactive. This is what you're asking us to be, you know, to take a look at these 3 you know, overarching issues that have been raised up to become the most emergent issues in the aftermath of COVID. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, definitely. And it's in conjunction with the district, right? This is not, again, this isn't just me. I've had conversations with, you know, cabinet members, with Dr. Cash himself, and this was
I'm not disagreeing at all with what you came up with. I think you really addressed, you know, if there were 3 issues that are the most emergent issues, I would agree that those are the most emergent issues. But this is what I'm trying to understand. Are you suggesting that as a board that we create 3 additional committees and that we have 3 people chair those committees? Or are you suggesting that we just band together like 3, 3, and 3 and that we do some work on, you know, to the side and report to the larger committees? I don't understand the structure of what you're suggesting at all.
It's exactly your second point. It's banding together, maybe, you know, hopefully 3, 3, and 3. Right now, what's happening is under executive affairs is where you create any type of ad hoc committee. You know, that's where you legally start these proceedings. But then as 3 people decide where they want to, you know, committees they want to go on. What they would do is work offline and report back to the committees that it aligns with. So
Okay.
charter schools would be under, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but charter schools usually falls under executive affairs. But to be honest, I'm looking to work with the funding piece, right?
Okay.
And
So
I'm totally aware that Larry.
The funding piece would report to finance and ops, and
Right,
the
that's my assumption.
and the remote learning then would report to student achievement. Is how you're envisioning this?
I think that student achievement and educational support both kind of tie in together with that. So that's something that we need to definitely look into, because I mean, just looking at what the actual issues are, they fall into both pretty tight. So this call is to make sure we figure out where that lands.
Okay, and then are you sort of saying that whoever is involved in each one of these committees, then we're going to come up with our own agenda of whatever issues that we're prioritizing, working together with the three people who are on the committee, and then doing this work and then reporting back once a month. Is that what you're saying?
The report backs will come probably more frequent than once a month, considering the time frame that we're in to get some stuff done. But
Okay.
Dr. Cash and Cabinet, if you can help me out here with, I'm assuming and hoping that each of the three board members working with these committees will have the full support of the district in order to be able to bounce everything off each other and get the work done. So it isn't just board members trying to figure out the next steps. It's, with finance, you have Jeff who's going to be working with you, and then, Dr. Cash and Cabinet can find whatever district staff can work with those board members in these committees. But
Okay,
yeah,
so
I think you're right.
Dr. Cash then is going to recommend some cabinet members to fill in with the board members to make up the balance of these committees.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm volunteering them for the remote learning one. Okay. I just want that. Okay.
So far, I'm finance, Larry's charter, Hope's volunteering for the other one. I have Ann next, then Sharon, then Terrence.
All right.
Ann, you're up next.
I think you're muted. We lost Ann.
Sharon, go ahead until Ann gets back on. I think she's trying to reboot herself.
Okay, no problem. So when in the forming of the ad hoc committees, one of the things I was hoping that we would do is make it general. Ann, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, she's ready. Let her go ahead and do her, because she was next. I'm
It'll
sorry.
be quick. It froze unmute. So the way a lot of my questions were already answered in terms of the structure. I just wanted to add on, like what Lou and Hope were pointing out, it needs some structure in terms of ad hoc committees of how to work. I like the idea of reporting back to committees because it allows a space for more work to get done, and that'll speed things up. And the way that I'm looking at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what you want from these committees are some strategic priorities, some goals, some action items that then we can create some coalitions with the board and work out. So that's a lot of what Lou was talking about with funding, right? Is identifying some priorities, getting some action items, and then working as a group to create some change as we move forward. I think all of that would work really well, especially having timelines, especially since we have this kind of compressed timeline. So aside from supporting what people have already said, I would be interested in remote learning, working with whoever's interested in that.
Good, I got you down for that. And Sharon, you're next, but I do want to add, I did not, formulate in my head what that structure would look like. It's kind of something I do offline anyway, but this is for us to discuss now. So I'm really glad that, all this is formulating right here on the spot. So thank you. And I have you down for remote learning. Sharon, you're next.
Okay, so one of the things I was hoping, and in regards to the items that are being reviewed, it should be a general consensus of the board for the items that are going to be reviewed under each committee. And the object is, the goal is to have that information brought back to the entire board and reviewed. To see the topic to be expanded a little bit more. When you say federal funding, that's limited to me. So I would like to see maybe another topic that encompasses the additional things, because one of the things that was not mentioned that I am very concerned about moving forward with as a board is to take a look at internal operations and to see where we can save money, in what areas we can save money and what areas we can make money. So if we're going to go into limited to like federal funding as the ad hoc, I would like to see it maybe in a general, a larger topic or something. And I'm not trying to define it, but that's something that maybe the board could talk about, so that we don't just talk about federal funding under the ad hoc. Because when you look at the policy, it talks about being specific you're doing, because some of the things since I've been on the board that have not happened within probably the past 7 or 8 years is audits. The board has not requested an audit. Typically in the past, the board would request certain things to be audited. They would also look at certain things. I can remember, I think in 2012, the auditors took a look at Title I, if I remember right, and did an audit on Title I and brought back some very good suggestions. So that's just an idea. I don't want us to be limited because what if you discover something and then you say, it's not federal funding, I can't do it. So that's what I'm concerned. I heard you list the other things. In regards to the charter schools, I'm interested in working at, and as the president, I'm an ex officio in any of these committees. But what I like, my focus at this point, primarily on charters, because there are 4 pending charters on our backs at this point to our district. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that. And I have the passion and Larry has the passion. So I'm going to set myself up, but I will be a part, be a part of in any of these ad hoc committees as we need to be. The other concern is also in regards to remote learning. We are limiting ourselves to remote learning, and I just would like us to think about maybe a broader topic that covers more than just remote learning. So that's just my ideas. That's all I'm thinking. So, that's all. That's all. Cass, is your hand up?
Okay.
Is
I
Dr.
have
Cass' hand up?
Dr. Cash. Yep, Dr. Cash's hand is up. Terrence, I'm gonna allow him to go first, and then I'm gonna hit you up. And I saw your hand, Dan. Go ahead, Dr. Cash.
Yes, good evening, colleagues. I would just like to respond to some of the topic concerns or the issues there. I want to commend the board for this idea. I think it's terrific. Jennifer, you're to be commended for the initiation of this. This is very, very important for the board to start to wrap around high impact, high priority matters that are facing the district right now. So I commend you for that. On the issue of federal, it is beyond federal's dollars alone. I think we should think broadly about that. I think that we should be talking about ways to generate revenue in any ways that we can. So if it's through cost savings, through internal structure or internal operations, cost avoidance, when we look at our internal operations, revenue generation, other ways to bring money into the district by grants or by extramural funding that might come available during the pandemic time just for education. We should be looking out globally, internationally for any funds we can get to come in and help offset our O&M budget. That's the kind of idea. Private funding and funding organizations public funding organizations. There's a lot of money out there that will be out there for specific causes like equity issues, technology issues, and we just have to go in search of. So staff would be working closely with you as a board to just go singularly after dollars that would help us get what we need for our children. So I do see it broader than just the federal. That's one comment. Another comment on the charter, the charter schools is that issue needs to be almost a 24/7 effort right now. We got to fight until we get legislation that puts a cap on charters for Western New York and for Buffalo in particular. And there are a lot of strategies, a number of strategies that we should be pursuing at the same time around that. And so that's a very important one. And again, I commend you for thinking of just an ad hoc for that. And then on the third one, where we go remote learning, the idea there that would be helpful, colleagues, is remote learning, how we can continue to improve that, because that's going to be the new normal going forward. We know that. But then also reopening of school, summer school, and then on to the reopening of school, so that you all are fully engaged. You know, the ones who are on that committee are fully engaged in the thinking and the planning for the eventual reopening of schools. So it's sort of a little combo there, and I think that would be a very helpful committee as well. So I just wanted to kind of add in some thinking that the staff has been thinking about, that if we work together along those lines, it'll be terrific. So thank you.
Okay.
Sarah, was that
duly
helpful?
noted. Yeah, it was. And then again, once these sort of kind of broad committees are formed, then we can expand once you're in them. What exactly is the title? What are you concentrating on? I apologize because I never meant just federal, and I know I put that down there, but I'm looking as local as it gets right now. So all funding, bring it all on. And I'm sorry to keep delaying. Terrence, you're up, and I want to make sure because I see here. Ann, did you put your hand up again? Just yes or no? Okay, and Lou, did you put your hand up again? Gotcha. So Terrence, and then we'll hit Ann, and then Lou.
You forgot Kathy.
And Kathy.
I'm sorry, I
Kathy
didn't
was
see
there.
this.
It is,
She was-
I don't have a name. I seem like my name is not there and you're mixing me up with Ann up there. That was
No,
my,
I have names here next year. Okay, let's just put, can I put you after Lou then? It would be Terrence and Lou, then you. Are you okay with that?
You can put her before me.
Yeah.
And
She
you're
was
before
open.
Lou. What a gentleman.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Terrence.
Okay, the ideas for these committees are wonderful. I think that we talked about this in the past and how to address the means and concerns that we have. I believe that we're looking at the federal grants. That's going to be available but limited. We all know that that's not going to be a very good outlook for us due to our relationship with the federal government and the state of New York. So looking for private grants, want to concentrate more on that. Looking for private funding and private grants, and also far as committees. I believe that we listed a couple committees, and I said I know we're looking for a broader bunch because I also would like to look for different other type of committees we could work on also, because there are other pressing needs that we have. I know financially, we're going to be strapped coming up in the future, and that's something that needs more than just us, because we look at the expertise of our purview, and we look, and I believe that the district should look more towards finding agencies or companies that deal with grants and deal with grant writing. I know we have grant writers on staff, but looking for other alternatives that can help our district out. People that's do this for a living, and others that may have other avenues across the country or across the state of New York that can help us pursue these endeavors. Looking at us, are we capable of finding grants? Yes, we are capable of finding grants. We are capable of writing some grants. But I believe that we should outsource that and look for other agencies that can try to help fulfill those needs that we have as a district. Professionals that does this for a living. The companies that we should be looking for. Also, I'd like to raise my hand for the remote learning. You know, that's part of one of the things on the committee later on that we'll be talking about, and trying to find other avenues. I hear a lot of complaints from parents and frustrated kids, you know, about the way things are going now. And I know that we have our backs against the wall, you know, to actually what type of education can we put out, can we teach? And we know that some kids are responding very well to this type of teaching, remote learning, and you know, and then some need more virtual type learning. So we can look into addressing those needs. And also with these committees, will we have focus groups? Can we have other people that can chime in, that can, or focus groups, committee leaders, or non-for-profit organizations that's been working with like maybe if it's a children's group or maybe it's education, different types of education and learning. We should be looking into those also. Also feel that with the expertise and organization, you know, Dr. Cash hit on the nail when he said about cost saving and looking to cash avoidance, you know, avoiding with departments that, you know, that really is not needed or things that we, you know, we can cut back on. You know, that's going to be a big thing in the future anyway about cutbacks and where we cut back at. So if we can look at that. And the last thing I'd like to add is with the grant writing, going back to grant writing, that can we pull the grants up that we had in the past to make sure those are completed and see what grants we apply for and see which ones are available so we can see it as a board which direction we can go in with that. The ad hoc committees are I believe is a great thing, and we can broaden our scope to other things that we can address with these with our expertise. Everybody on the board has a different characteristic in their career that brings this board together, you know, that makes it the tight-knit group it is. So we can try to concentrate in our strength. I think that we can get a lot accomplished.
Thank you, Terrence. And that's kind of the point of these committees, right? Once you get into them, you can formulate how you're gonna operate. So even if you have 6 staff members and 3 board members on a committee, that doesn't generate all that we need to know. Of course, we're gonna be reaching out to, you know, organizations and our folks in Buffalo that'll help out in these committees as well. But setting up the structure and the goals in order, you know, whoever we reach out to, we still have goals to meet so we can report back. So you're 100% on all of that. Just, you know, we have to formulate how all that looks and operates within the committees once you were established. Anne, you're next.
Or Kathy.
Sorry, y'all. That's my unmuting has been really interesting. I wanted to point out that one particular thing about remote learning is that the remote learning that we've been doing is crisis management. It's not planned in advance. And even the kind of remote learning that we'll be able to do in the fall, it's in response to crisis management. It's just with a little more time to actually work on it. And so I want to distinguish it from any push from something else. It's more like contingency planning. That's a big piece of this. This is contingency planning. It's about talking about what our options may be in, as Dr. Cash pointed really, really well, the new normal, and taking into account what the challenge is and the opportunities that have presented us in response to the COVID-19 epidemic. And so if we want to name it something else, we can. Maybe that's something the ad hoc committee can tackle, but I think we're pretty much on the same page about what that would be.
Right. Okay, Kathy.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Jen, I have to give you kudos for taking the lead in putting together these ad hoc committees. I too believe that expertise would be in the remote learning space. 60% of my classes were distance learning in my PhD program. And so I have a lot of experience in that area, and I know it can work. Now, when we talk about crisis planning, I think remote learning can be advantageous not in the sense that it's 100%, but it can be advantageous when we look at AP courses, for example. If we look at AP courses, you know, a number of children can get information from distance learning as they would inside of a class. So let's not look at it as crisis planning, but it can be a concrete learning experience for young people. And then the other issues I was going to consider, most of you have addressed, particularly when you talk about remote learning in summer school, we have to look at opening up schools as well. I heard this morning that California, for example, has canceled all of their fall classes and they're going completely distance learning and remote. I'm talking about higher ed, Berkeley, California, those kind of schools. And so I'm thinking in terms of that's one state. So we have to look at what the precedent's going to be for other states. So I would like to be on the remote learning in summer school and open up schools. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so that's 4 in remote learning. We're going to make this work, people. Lou, you're up next.
Thank you, Jen. One of the things that I don't know how well we've been addressing, but they play a vital role in all of this is all of our bargaining units, because they are not only the largest single expense of the district, but if we're going to do this long term, we're going to need their buy-in. And if there's going to be any type of changes going forward, we're going to need their buy-in as well. They're also going to be very effective in terms of lobbying at the state level or at the local level if we can, you know, show united front, because this will be their union members that will be going out the door if we lose our funding. So I just want to put that out there, also making sure that we have some type of outreach or communication, make them feel like they're part of this, and more than just make them part of this going forward, just so we can show everybody that there's this united front in Buffalo, and our priority is trying to give the best education we can for all the students in the city of Buffalo.
Jan, let me just say to Lou, that's a great point, and just want to let you know that on the ad hoc committees, you know, I think you have some flexibility to do that if you'd like, but I will tell you that the internal committees that align to some of this work, I've reached out to the BPS, to the BCSA, and we do have representation going forward on a number of these internal, you know, the internal work that we're doing to get ready for school, to give, you know, plan for summer school and so forth. So we have those union representation on those internal committees. But you might want to have them on some of your ad hoc too. It's up to you.
I'm so volunteering. That's the committee I want to work on, and organizing, lobbying, that's my thing. I travel to Albany, I don't know how many times a year, and I'm super excited to get involved in making sure that community is involved. And I want everybody to remember, each one of you, we all have our community to get insight from in order to drive the work that we're doing, right? So it doesn't look like it's just 9 board members and some district staff. Like, we can bring together, and this is what I'm hoping to bring back to community, is the board and the district are coming together to really handle things. Where do you fit in? So that when we come to the state and we come to federal, we go wherever, we're powerful, right? Because we'll have everybody behind us who sees that we're unified. So Lou, I love that, and I'm down. I do see Paulette. I see, let me see. I'm not sure. I got Larry and Hope, Paulette, and Ann and Lou again. Like, I don't know if the hands just stay up. Okay, so Larry, Paulette, you next, huh?
I put
And
mine
then
back
you,
up.
okay,
So
so I just want to
I
make
can
sure.
lower mine. Mine's off now. So if you just request, if people don't want to speak, to re-click their hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I turned mine off too.
Okay, I got Lou and or not Lou, I got Paulette and I got Larry. Thank you, Paulette, you're up.
Okay, I had just wanted to say a couple things. One about the remote learning. Jen and I were at a meeting on a conference today with Herman Bernardino School, and I asked the teachers there about the difficulty. They're calling all the parents. They're doing the best they can, but realistically, what's the result? How many of the kids are you actually reaching, and what are their concerns? And I had a teacher say she had 40 children, and 15 of them she wasn't able to reach. And I mean, the teachers are going to the doors and they're knocking and they're trying, but in this remote learning experiment or transition, we're losing up to 30% of the kids. So if we have this committee, we really need to come up with some way of getting to the schools, because my question before at the last meeting was, if children were missing 2 months of schools because they didn't have computers or we didn't get it, they couldn't log on, they would be marked truant, chronic truant. There's got to be some way to mimic what we did in the building schools. If the child doesn't show up and they're not reporting to school for any significant time, they're chronically absent. The attendance teachers go out somehow, some way. We make sure our kids get an education. So that's the concern about the remote learning committee. And the other committee meeting I had today was with a group of community leaders who said, and they asked me to ask the committees and the board and the administration, when you talk about reopening schools, can you please allow the community to have some input? They're the consumer and they're the ones having the problem. Can we please have some kind of forum and everybody can put their input, because they want input into how we reopen the schools. Some of them were suggesting half of the remote children be remote learning, and the other half, which didn't show up, didn't log on, and they're forced to go to school because otherwise they won't get an education. But they told me to ask, please get community input, allow the community to have input. That's my take on the remote learning. I signed up for the charter schools because Dr. Cash had indicated that was his big #1 priority. If we don't stop that drain in the proliferation of charter schools, we're not going to have any money. We won't be able to give quality education to our schools. So I told Sharon before I knew about these other committees that I wanted to be on the charter school committee because it's big money. My question to you, Jen, lastly, is how do you envision these subcommittee meeting? Because if we're only just meeting on Wednesdays, and there's no work getting done, are you anticipating that the committees would come and meet with staff and have a couple meetings a month or a meeting every week and come up with the answers to these questions, or work with Dr. Case with some of the administrative team to get the answer to these questions? How do you see this structure, this committee been working?
Yeah, so this is not this space where we meet the first 2 Wednesdays and do our committee meetings and board meetings. This is where the updates happen. The work has to happen in between, right? So this is where we had to have this call so we can make this clear. This isn't, put 5 minutes of work in before you go and report on something back. This is really kind of putting in, once a week you all get on a call just like this. Can the district verify, because I heard that we all now have life-size accounts through the board where we can all get on calls or create calls. Is that true? Aaron or Mike?
I'm not aware of that. We can find out though. I have not heard that. Where'd you hear that from?
I did. It's rumor. There's rumor everywhere. So this is why I'm asking now. And I literally heard it today, or else I would have asked. But if it's possible,
Would you like that to happen?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. We're able to, the people who are in these committees, if the district person who's in that can help us like figure out a time or a schedule for us to meet. My personal preference for the committee that I'm on, which Lou, am I understanding that this might be where you fall because you knew so much about it? I just don't want to assume, but I
That's
feel like
fine. I'll
I feel
serve
like
on
it's
whatever
just me and
committee you guys.
you.
I'll serve on whatever committee you guys want me to.
But I mean, whoever decided to go on the committee, so you have 4 people who want to deal with remote learning. You have, and I'm just going back here, I see Paulette, Larry, and Sharon kind of focusing on charters. I really wanted to focus on the first one and expand and broaden that as we all suggested. And if Lou wouldn't mind working with me, maybe, and again, we're going to all cross paths eventually, sooner or later, but we have to have an established every committee meets, subcommittee meets, once a week. Maybe you don't have to have every single person in it, but one of the board members has to be there in order to relay back the work that's happening with the other board members. That all has to be kind of configured within your ad hoc committee, right? If we drill down on every little kind of structure of how the ad hoc committees come together, then we're micromanaging each other and we're not giving each other the space to kind of do as according to what our availability and our time is. There's still folks working out there, and we have to be, sensitive of people's time, but then also we all have to think about it. We walked doors and we did the due diligence to represent people, and now is the time, right? It's like our backs are up against the wall, and so are 35,000, children and families. So what are we willing to put in to make sure we're not floating, not even floating, we're not like bricks underwater next year.
Ms.
So,
McCosey,
that's
very quickly, Myra Burden just sent me a message, and she said that the board members, we can set up life-size accounts for the board members. Okay.
Nice, thank you. So I have on deck Larry, then I saw
Jen,
Terrence,
I
I
have one
believe.
last thing. Jen,
Yes,
I have one last thing. On the finance committee, I did speak with Jeff because the other biggest worry that I have, I sent everybody the email, is about the city of Buffalo and the mayor saying they can drain our entire fund balance if need be to balance their budget. And that's a very big source of concern. We asked in November that we come up with an understanding from the city of Buffalo that they have to notify us before they take our money, and that there has to be some kind of understanding or agreement that we know they can pay us back our money, and there's some kind of promissory note, something to guarantee we'll get our money back. I did outline that, and I outlined in that email, and I spoke to Jeff Pritchard, who's our CFO, and he said that he is concerned. He is concerned about the amount of money that could be used out of our fund balance, and that he is taking care of this issue by addressing it to the Fiscal Stability Board. And he is asking specifically the things that we need. We need some transparency and some clarity. We need some kind of promissory note, something. It's something that documents how much that they are borrowing and using and how they can pay us back. And then the big question is, if the worst case scenario comes, because the city of Buffalo is sitting here they're running 9 weeks of their budget, 17% of their budget. They're depending on the city, the district, the school district to run their operations. And they're counting on the state to give them $90-some million at the end of June to pay us back. God forbid something happens and Governor Cuomo cuts their 20%, cuts us 20%, and they don't have a way to pay us back. And they go into July 1st with their new budget, which also has a $76 million hole in it. They have $65 million that they're saying Trump is going to give them. And then they have $11 million they're saying the casinos is going to give them. They got a $76 million hole before they sneeze July 1st. So it's a real concern, guys. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, more than half of our fund balance, up to all of our fund balance, they may need just to operate. We need some protections. And if the fight, I guess I'll be an ad hoc member, a member of the finance committee too, because that is my biggest concern. That is my word. We could get wiped out on everything we've done to balance ourselves in our 4-year plan.
Well, real talk. I call that woods. Let it be. And I've opened up with that we got to have some clarity, regardless of whatever's been done decades ago and the good old boy handshakes and coffee conversations that don't strive anymore. We need some promises in written form that this money is going to be returned back to the district, because the same people they want to operate the city for are the same ones that we're taking care of on a daily. So that's that. Sorry. Larry, then Terrence and Sharon, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to quickly clarify. It was stated earlier that the opportunity for federal funding is lost. And I want to correct that that is not the case at all. There is a real opportunity for federal funding to come in. Speaker Pelosi has a bill right now that's being considered that's $2 to $3 trillion, and it includes funding for states, cities, municipalities, and schools. Senator Gillibrand, Senator Schumer, Congressman Higgins are all on record in advocating and supporting a stimulus for our states, for our cities, and for our schools. So the opportunity is certainly there, and we need to keep the heat and the pressure on. Now is not the time to let go of that.
$2 billion for Buffalo.
Or more.
Terrence and Larry, I hear you.
That, Larry.
So I'm going to fight.
Point.
That's what the financial committee needs to do, is fight that, make sure we get for that and stand behind those folks that are fighting for us. So that's a very clear point. I'm sorry, Terrence, go ahead.
Okay, my question is about other districts across the country. Are they using only board members or local politicians to try to fight for our monies for public schools? Are they using outside agencies also in lobbyist groups? How can we round up a couple of lobbyist groups to also go and help support us in these measures? So I think we should be looking at those tactics. And also, when we're looking at the reopening of the schools, I know Governor Cuomo with his Education Advisory Council, he brought another person in, Melanie Baker from the United Way, and she's going to be representing this area for reopening of the schools and working with his council. And I think that we should also invite her to the table of our council to help get decided what the state, how they're rendering their decisions, and how we can also work with her for our local decisions. I believe that she should be at the table also for that ad hoc council.
And that's something you guys who are in that committee can discuss and see if you bring her, what you guys all agree to do. As far as other agencies, I've mentioned this before, just being part of Local Progress, which is a progressive candidate type of organization that's nationwide. I've been on multiple webinars and calls. I lead the National Consortium for School Boards with folks right now representing Western New York. And there are many, and I have all the documents coming soon, but there are many school districts that have already started the fight. They started it right in California. A small town district won over $90 million in federal funding because everybody came in coalition together. We're talking government, state, parents, teachers, the whole nine. Our issue here in Buffalo, and knowing this as an organizer, we have many organizations, and I really could care not if people can hear what I'm saying. You have a lot of CBOs, you have a lot of organizations, and everybody claims to be working in together, but when it comes down to really doing the do and coming together, there's always a roadblock because everybody's worried about their funding. People need to start coming together. We have more CBOs in Buffalo, New York than a lot of major cities, and we are known for being leaders, we're known for being lobbyists, we're known to go to DC and really make things happen, but we only do it under our own personal umbrellas with our organizations. We need to come together. So willing to help.
That's the work. That's the work of these committees. That's what you do.
This is what we
The
have
work
to
of the
do.
committees, absolutely.
Everybody has to get in, really dig deep to who you know and who they know, because it's not just about you. It's who the people you know who have power, who do they know, and putting pressure on them, because everybody's got a family member or somebody who lives in Buffalo, New York that's affected right now. So Sharon, you're next.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that we have a board meeting next week, and if it's possible, if we could ask the, I don't know, we're calling the Ways to Generate Revenue Committee, or whatever in the name you guys decide that you want, to possibly convene and put together a resolution and a letter that we can send out. Our superintendent has already done that. You've seen other organizations, and this is in light of the fact that today we received a letter from Chancellor Rosa Peel for, in my opinion, how I read it, for school boards to out and start going after the federal funding. And I would like to make sure and encourage us that we make sure that we are not partisan, that we include all legislators that work in this district. It is important, I think, more so than ever, for suburbia to understand the impact of what we're doing here, to make sure that you have citizens who are able assist in times of difficult times. And that's who we have on our frontline workers. A lot of our workers are frontline workers in a lot of respect. And so they also have a vested interest in making sure that children inside this inner city are educated and are able to read and write, so that in the event they get older or we have another situation such as this, that they are prepared. So I think we do have friends in the suburbs that will support us in this agenda, because they also are vested. And the proof is in what's going on now in this country. Who is basically keeping this country afloat? Certainly, although the doctors, and we appreciate the nurses and the medical people, the everyday people who work in the supermarkets, who work in the communities, are the ones who are keeping this, working in the nursing homes and things like that. And on that note, I just like that at our last meeting, we did an honor to Dr. Cash. I would like Vice President Mukuzi, if we could talk about the possibility of saluting our frontline workers, the people who have been holding up our district at our next board meeting, which is next week. And so that's a conversation that I just wanted to throw out there, that it would be nice to have some photos of those people who are working and in our food helpers, our custodians, and all of them, to show who our frontline workers are as well, in addition to what's going on outside of the district. So that's just something I was throwing out there.
I agree with all that.
Yes, Dr.
Could I take
Perez?
a moment of privilege?
Yes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Jennifer, may I? Okay.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea, Ms. Cotman, and certainly we'll help you with that, and you'll hear a little bit more about that under the next committee, some of these people. But Terrence asked the question, and Larry and you, Sharon, alluded to it. I think it's very important for the board and the community to know that we pay upwards of almost $200,000 a year for some very powerful lobbyists on our behalf every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to know who these people are. So, for example, we're a member of the Big Five School District Association. We pay $70,000 a year to be part of that organization, and one of their primary purposes is to lobby the state legislature on behalf of the interests and needs of the Big Five districts. There's 705 districts in New York State. The Big Five are New York, Yonkers, Utica, not Utica really, but Utica has been added lately,
Yeah.
recently.
Syracuse.
Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. And together, that's almost half the kids in the whole state are in those 5 districts. So we are a powerful entity when our voice speaks on behalf of the needs of all of those children. Half the children in New York, and that's millions of children. So I think that's one big group. And I'll be succinct, but Council of Great City Schools represents 74, 76 big cities in the country. And we're a very powerful force together. And they've been doing a good job lobbying on behalf of all of public education in the great cities of America. You have your National School Board Association. You have your Erie County School Board Association and your New York State Association. So all of these are lobbying forces, Mr. Hurd, and we just need to now unify, I think, around these financial needs and resources for our children as we go through this pandemic together. Just wanted to make that point, because when you unify, you're a much, much more powerful voice in Washington, because they see that as votes. They see that as votes. So we're here to support you in whatever you decide to do along these lines.
Okay, so Jennifer, can I just say something? So Dr. Cash, much of this work you're already doing. And so as far as you're having different meetings, I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure you are. So in moving forward, would be included in those conversations that you're having? You're having a conversation about anything that impacts this, would they be automatically brought in, or are board members expected to generate their own conversations independent of those meetings?
Well, kind of how I see this is the operational detail that needs to continue to be imagined and reimagined of the new schooling that's going to be coming into play as we go through this pandemic. That is sapping a lot of our time on a daily basis. As I told you, we're meeting almost 12 hours a day now to try to figure out what the new year will look like, what the needs of our children coming back, what kind of assessments will be needed, how will we combine standards rather than going, pacing them individually. We're going to have to combine it and make what we call power standards. All the professional development that's going to be required for our teachers in this new remote learning environment that's just got to be ongoing. That's what's going on every day. They're working on about 10 tasks, major tasks, every day. So I think that the ad hoc, because it's 9 of you, and you represent a large constituency out in Buffalo, your ideas, your thinking, what you're hearing, your own research about best practices or emerging practices around the globe, for that matter. The countries that are starting to reopen, what's going on there with schools, for example. What are we doing here in the schools and school systems that seem to be ahead on the remote learning issue, and how are they tackling equity? So that digital divide can truly, this is an opportunity now to close that divide once and for all. And so we're working and that's an aspiration out of all this. I hope that we can get there, that every child has internet access, every child has a functional loaded device full of great educational applications, and they're working and learning at their own pace 24/7. If they want to go fast, they go fast. If they need additional help and struggle, then we have all the resources in place to help them with that as well. So I don't know if we want to mix and match. I would rather put some of my top people into your committees and then let them help you and guide in some cases, and in other cases, follow through on some ideas that you might have. But I don't, we still have to do the day-to-day operations of the district. And so I did see this as different. I think Jennifer alluded to it. There's a lot of partners out there that are waiting to help. They just need to be asked, and they need to be knitted in to this work. So as board members, as activists, and as your stakeholders out there, that would be a tremendous value add if you can generate and get them involved. The parent congress. When somebody said get the parents involved, let's get them involved. This is the time to absolutely be involved, fully engaged in this work. So I just think if you focus on these three big areas, you can go a long way and help us as value add rather than just joining our day to day. That would probably bore you to tears. But we're getting great work done as a team, and I look at this as a helpful set of committees.
Sharon, do you have anything to add to that? Well, thank you, Dr. Cash. That kind of puts a better glimpse into where the district would be coming with this and how you would be folding in. I do want to point out that because time is of the essence and we want to do the work, that we have to be really clear and concise with communication amongst us all, right? So whether or not, we definitely don't want to be rolled into your everyday, but at the same time, the access to not just your top folks, but then also knowing that your top folks are, they're dealing with the roadblocks that some of these organizations bring to the table that really need to be at the table. We don't, and I'm saying this publicly because there's no more need for drama now. We have to get the work done. So if you're not in it to win, if you're not in it to make sure that we start moving smoothly in Buffalo, New York with our Buffalo Public Education, and you have ulterior motives or whatever, and folks know who I'm talking to and you know who I'm speaking to. But we don't have time for that. And a lot of us on this board and a lot of district folks are not going to put up with it. So if you're in it to make sure that we're going to move forward in the way that we need to, then let's do this. And that's all I'm asking. I so appreciate the board members, how you came together, how you asked for what needs to be broadened. That means your heart is in it. You know exactly what you're trying to focus on. Because we're at 6:15 now, or 15 minutes over. I don't see anybody else's hand raised. Is there anything else anyone wants to add before I kind of summarize this conversation? Okay, I got Lou, Sharon. Go ahead, Lou.
Jen, if you could just summarize who's on what committee, and then when would you like the report out? When would you like us all to report back? Do you just want an email or a Word document, a summation of what we're doing? Let me know a date, a format, and who's on what committee. That'd be very helpful.
Okay, I do kind of have a summation for this. Does anyone else have anything else to add before I go into that and close this out?
Jennifer,
No?
just to let you know, I'll give you the district staff for each of these three committees tomorrow.
Okay, well, yeah, that'll work because you won't know really what's going on or to plug anybody until tomorrow anyway. So, and Terrence,
Right.
I see your hand up. I can't hear you, Terrence.
Oh, yes,
You're
if we can
muted.
use you can hear me? If we can use a program like Board Docs or Word, that way everybody can share files with one another so we know where we're at and what work that we're putting in, the body of work that we're doing, and maybe for agendas or other meetings so that we can share as a group. Can we utilize a tool like that?
Okay, so that is part of the summation. You guys ready? Here we go. We'll close it out.
Wait a minute, Jen, I
now-
wanted to say something else.
Oh, that's right, Sharon. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Closing your meeting now, I wanted to add two things, or are you going to close this session? Because I wanted to just slide in two things that I'm working on that I wanted to share with the board.
Okay.
Is it okay to do it now?
Yeah. And
So,
once you're done, then I'll close out.
Okay, one of the things that I'm working on is a resolution of equity. I'll be sharing it with the board members tomorrow. And I've already discussed it with Dr. Cash, and he's in agreement with it. This is basically putting some ground, building our foundation and securing what we're about as a district. The other thing I'm working on, and I'll be talking to permission of the superintendent, Rich Fanton, in regards to putting together a policy associated with fraud and waste. And so those are two things. I plan to have the resolution of equity by Friday. And certainly you can add your thoughts in and expand it. But I think it's important that with what we're going through, that we remain mindful of what our expectations are, particularly since we are possibly on our way to a potential legal battle in certain entities within our community. And so we want to put certain things in place. We've been working on our equity piece for at least the past 2 years. And Jennifer, I know you had some ideas on it, so I'm looking forward to see what your input is going to be. Talk about putting a policy together, and I think the time is of the essence that we put that policy in place now. I'm going to start out with a resolution with the idea to move it into a policy so that by the end of the year, we'll have a policy, or the end of this school year, we'll have a policy in place for moving forward. Questions on that? All right, thank you.
Thank you. So everybody's good now? I just want to say thank you for being so receptive to this idea of putting these committees together. I think that what we're looking for in the future is, number one, let me just say who has signed up. So officially, Lou and myself would be working on that very first committee around looking for and lobbying for and funding and budgets. Sharon will be kind of bouncing around, but putting her most attention toward charters. Paulette said that she would also work with Lou and I on the side, but her focus is also on charters. Larry, we knew where Larry was going before the conversation started, so Larry's working on charters. And I have Kathy, Terrence, and Hope all working with remote learning. So Dr. Cash, if that helps you, those are the board members who are going to be working on this when you start matching up district staff. I do want to just mention too, Sharon, I'll get in touch with you and Dr. Cash and staff around what we want to do next week to honor our frontline workers. I believe that that's absolutely imperative, considering, you know, we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have those workers and their volunteers helping us along the way. So that is a wonderful idea, and thank you. As far as structure goes, again, I just wanted to present these. Let's say that within this next week, if we can just at least report back by our board meeting that we've had a conversation with our group members, right? So the only expectation, because we do have a board meeting coming up, it is, you know, something we just introduced tonight, and it's 6 o'clock. By next Wednesday at our board meeting during, I don't know when we'll put it, maybe it'll be during my committee report. I'll just ask, you know, if everybody has had a chance to come together. In this time that you come together, this is the expectation, is you decide how often you want to meet, right? We will report back on, we will report back over email and stuff, but I think Terrence is right. We need to figure out, and I am not the one to really put that together, but how we can get, you know, just a shared document that one person from each committee is responsible for, that makes sure everyone else gets that. So we don't have 35 emails going around to everybody. You have one person in each committee that will be sharing information with other committees. So it's literally just an update when we get to our committee reports. You know, we all work together, and so it's how many times you're going to meet. I don't care what time that's on you guys, but how many times you're going to meet, and the fact, you know, whether or not you started talking about the list that I think Ann and Lou and everybody alluded to, but Ann really put it out there, which is like the priorities, the action steps, the goals. And if you wouldn't mind, or anybody wouldn't mind, just kind of listing out what that structure looks like, so we all can kind of have a sense of where we're going with it. We're not going to have action steps and all of that by next week. We realize that, but let's just all get on the same page. The goal is to find out what district members are going to be working with us, when we're going to meet, and you guys find out how often you're going to report back. Like, your goals are going to set the tone for the work that you do. But know that come committee time and board time, you can't come back with, oh, we had a conversation 2 weeks ago, Tuesday. That's not going to fly. So, let's just at least gear toward next week having our own structure of when we meet and logistics in place. Does that work for everybody? Do you think we should add more to that, or is that good enough for now?
So I think that's good.
Sounds great.
Colleagues, if I could
Great for
offer
now. It's a good
to
starting
be
point.
helpful, Jan, I think that's great. Good idea, good structure. What staff can do is just feed you on a regular basis good information relative to your committee. So when we send you information, please review it, please read it, because you need to be, as leaders of these committees, you need to be as up to date as you possibly can on these topics and on these issues. So that's what we'll do. And it may come into you from all different places and spaces, may come from all over the world. But if you can stay doing your homework and reading up and being a semi-expert on this, that can be helpful to you. Like, I just sent you something, for example, for the finance committee. I just sent it to you. It should be coming to you to your text. And that kind of information, you got to stay sharp because it changes day to day. And only last word I would use is that this is urgent. All of this is urgent.
So you, with what you just stated, I think that's awesome that information will come to us and from all over. Board members, it's up to you, but it immediately put me in the mindset of we have to be able to state what information we're looking for and then have the district give us what we're looking for in order to take on what we're trying to do. Because if we just get all kinds of information about all kinds of things, that can become way overwhelming, especially for the folks who are still kind of working, whether remotely or not, or, are trying to raise a 9-year-old. But if we can make sure, if we can make sure that we direct how the information comes and to set the tone in this week with them, how this works for you all.
We'll
I love all the information. But
yeah.
It has to be like, give us information around what's happening with this account. Then give us information about this, and then feed us everything you have. But if it just comes all over the place, it'll be incredible.
No. It'll be very focused. For example, what Jeff has sent out in the last week or two about charter schools and the summary and the main questions, that's indispensable for the committee that's going to work on charter schools. You see, that's what I mean by information. We're not going to try to overwhelm or overload you. It's just there's some indispensable facts and background and information on some of your committees that is, I think it would be helpful for you to have. That's all. And then anything else you ask for, then by all means, we'll go and try to get it for you.
Okay, well, we're all on the same page, and we agree to how we're gonna report back. The Monday before our board meeting next week, I'll shoot everybody an email just to kind of remind folks if they haven't already gotten on their calls or taken the initiative. Whoever it doesn't mean that somebody always has to be the leader of that committee, but it does mean that you got to work together to figure things out. So it might take a couple phone calls to get on the same page, but we got to put the work in. And I just want to share that I've been on quite a few calls this week, and there's been a lot of conversation around really communicating with your staff. So making sure that teachers, when you're starting to figure out PD and all of the new, nuances for what we're dealing with, that feedback is really necessary from the folks that are actually working with these students. Not saying that it hasn't been done. That's not the report back I'm getting. What I'm getting is they need to connect a little more, because some folks, you have some schools doing one thing, some schools doing another. Teachers, Buffalo is one big living room. Everybody talks to each other. So how do we make sure that everybody's communicating?
We don't disagree with that. We agree with that.
So yeah, that's just a report back that I got. But other than that, we're working on what needs to be worked on, and thank you very much. I'm closing the meeting out if anybody else is, if everybody's all set. Turn it over to Terrence.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Very, very informative meeting. And I would also like to say that that I'll be available for all the committees for your meeting. And if you need help anywhere that within the committees or any subgroups that we're going to put together, consider me. And if you need help or anything, I'll be there. Right now, let's start the educational support committee meeting. The time is 6:30. So we can keep track of time, but there's a number of things that we have to go over today that we felt that I met with President Felton Cotman, and we talked about various different areas that we need to talk about today and get some input on from the district. And not only for us, it's for the parents and the students of the district, because as of right now, everybody's confused. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen tomorrow or what we're going to do. We don't know how this COVID is going to act within our district, and the concerns of the parents, basically rely on us. We were chosen to help guide them through situations. Nobody knew this situation ever was going to happen, but well, some people predicted it. But we should know that the guidance that we give to our community should be reassuring, and that they should receive the correct information that we have. And some of the parents that I talked to felt that that they were being blindfolded, that they're not getting all the correct information or the full information about what's going on, especially the ones that's frustrated with some of the subjects we touched on earlier, like the learning process that's going on right now. There's a couple of issues that need to be addressed. Some of the things that Dr. Cash did have placed on the agenda, and there's a couple other minor issues that we have questions for also. But the first one that's on the agenda is the summer school update. So Dr. Cash, thank you for listening, because what we were looking for and I thought was important was for a plan A and a plan B. So the parents can understand exactly what was going on, so that if they are going back into buildings or we're not going back into buildings, they can have a clear understand what's going on, and also what programs, what subjects is going to be taught in summer school, and how can we help address the issues with their children. So I'll let Dr. Cash take it from there.
Okay, so Mr. Hurd, thank you. Board members, I'm not sure what I'm hearing there. Is everybody else hearing a little bit in the background? If it's a child, I don't mind. I understand that. But if it's something that we haven't muted our phone, is everybody good? You can hear me clearly? Okay. Maybe it's just on my end. So Ann Botticelli and her team, colleagues, as you know, during this time, we're not silo-wise or we're working silos. We work as a team, and everybody, oh, I see. Mike's putting up the slide. So we have one slide that we prepared, and we can amplify that. And Ann and her team have done a good job continuing to conceptualize what we know and what data we're going to have to be looking at relative to our students. The main overall point is that this is not cut in stone yet. This is an emerging conceptualization for possible summer school. We still will need to hear from the governor and from other federal sources to see if in fact we can even have summer school. But until then, we continue to plan. I like where we are so far. We'll amplify and I'll amend and add to whatever Ann says. We've talked a lot about this with her team. So Ann, if you could talk in three groups, the conceptualizations for pre-K to 6, for our 7 to 12 students, and for a virtual model, which is most likely at this point. And then depending on how things continue, maybe a blended model for some small group of students. Ann.
Dr. Cash, you're talking to Ann Botticelli?
Yes, Ann Botticelli, I'm
okay.
sorry.
No problem. So we are meeting as a committee, And we've been talking about what pre-K to 6 could look like because we didn't previously have those offerings. So what we have discussed is that obviously we need to provide some reinforcement for English language arts and mathematics. But we looked at sort of grouping this similar to our ELT program. So there would be academic enrichment, a health and wellness component, and a positive youth development component. We wanted to stay as consistent as we could. So for academic enrichment, obviously English language arts and mathematics. And then for the health and wellness component, we talked about a whole child focus on nutrition, wellness, social emotional learning. So making sure that we're supporting our students because we know how difficult the situation has been for many of them. And we want to be able to make sure that we address their needs. And then in terms of positive youth development, we're looking at different options for virtual enrichment programming. So for example, what can we find to support students in STEM activities, music or art activities, fitness activities, having those options for students. And then we are also working with Say Yes. So they are going to help provide some of these opportunities for the students, probably most likely following the academic programming at the end. So that would be sort of our pre-K 6 model at this point. We do recognize it will most likely be virtual. So we are working to make sure that we have curriculum available in a virtual model. We also recognize that there's always points in time when someone might not have technology access. So we'd be considering learning packets or other materials to reach those students if need be. Our 7 to 12 program will be online, but it will be very similar to what we've done in the past in the sense that in 7 and 8, it's our core area subjects that are offered. And then we traditionally offer our Regents courses for the other 9 to 12 students, and then other courses as needed. So some years we need to add Global 9, or we need to add English 9, or we might need to add a studio and art course, depending on the number of students that would need that support. We've had some virtual opportunities in the past in our 9 to 12 program, so we have a good base to start with there. And then I think, you know, Dr. Cash has mentioned we have 2 potential models. One would be entirely virtual with the support of hard copy learning packets as needed. We're looking at best practices in remote learning. So we've already started putting together some professional development opportunities for teachers because we recognize, I think, and people have pointed this out, remote learning is different than typical, this typical structure we have in the regular day. And to Dr. Rivera's point, we want to make sure that we are trying to be as proactive as possible and think about best practices in remote learning as opposed to being reactive. We'll also be talking with various partners about technology. We have some availability with our current iPads in classrooms. So I know Myra's team is working diligently to try to pull together the resources that would be available if we need to give those out to students for summer learning. And then potentially, if the governor allows us back in, we might try a blended model. So we have a small pilot population of students that would be able to go back on campus following all needed safety protocols. But regardless, we are developing our curriculum so that it could be remote, depending on the need.
Now, Ann, could you say more about the K2, pre-K to 2, because that's a group we don't have iPads or devices for at this point, but we want to get them devices. Say more about the developmentally appropriate considerations that we've been thinking about for that age group.
Sure. So when I talk about remote learning looking different than regular instruction, it's probably most apparent for the youngest students. So we want to make sure that when we're planning instruction for those younger students, that we are thinking about their attention span, building in opportunities for them to sort of, I guess, get the wiggles out, making it very interactive to keep them engaged, because we know that they're not going to sit for an hour straight and just focus on a screen. So we want to be very mindful of the way that we offer opportunities for those students.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann. Question? Go ahead, Mr. Hurd.
Yes, I was going to open up for questions. I was going to open up for questions. I know that Mrs. Monticelli, thank you. You've been working very hard on this, and you and your team. And like my concerns were for what we have now. We have. I speak with a lot of youth groups and a lot of teachers, and we talked about the virtual learning. And I think that this is just my thought that a virtual plan works a lot better than looking at doing a lot of work on the screen for some of our kids. I'm afraid that we're going to lose some of our kids. Some have been frustrated, some has been aggravated, and had ill remarks towards teachers while online and things like that, and repercussions have taken place from just the language with the teachers, and they're also frustrated in this. And I know there's a hard task that this is new for everybody. I know that for the children, they've been slapped in the face with this type of learning and coming out of the school structure. And we know that some of our kids have special needs, and those that don't have special needs grew up on the interface of a teacher, being in a room with them, giving instruction, getting that one-on-one and learning each other's personality and needs. So learning the kids' needs. So from doing a lot of reading, I found that the virtual learning where you have a teacher and also having a class like in a Zoom type setting, seem to be working better. And I would like to see if we as a district can look into some information maybe to find out which is the better means. I did a lot of work with my grandkids, and it's really difficult keeping up with the lesson plans and the times, especially when you got two or more children in the household, and the parents and grandparents and caregivers are very, very frustrated, and some of them have put it down, or taking breaks for a day or two, and the kids are not getting all the lessons that that they have. If you look at an adult who may give up for a moment, the kid may exhibit the same type of traits. So what as a district are we doing, and have we interviewed the parents, and did a study with them to find out what their concerns are or what they're doing? It's just some of the questions that I have, and I would like to open up to all the board members that would like to interject or have questions or have answers. Let me see. Oh, give me 1 second.
So
I don't see. I see.
Jennifer.
I'm going in order. The first one I have is President Belton Cotman.
okay, thank you. So my question is similar to a point you just made in regards to an assessment of what the parents' needs are. As I wrote down during this presentation was where are the parents? What's the parent piece in this? And have we assessed what our parents capable of? I know that Buffalo is listed as one of the highest areas of having illiteracy in our city, and so from my perspective, I sort of think some sort of assessment or some sort of a survey is needed, and we need this because we need to be able to understand what our needs are for our parents as well as for our students, and we need to grow on this, and I'm not sure that has been done. And then that goes back to the literacy piece. Do we have parents that are able to even do that type of assessment? So can we provide some resources in that? My concern is that if we are looking at what's happening nationally, probably a year out easily from being able to probably be comfortable as from my perspective as far as allowing children back into the building. So I think we need to grow on it with this piece, and we need to find out what our parents' needs are today, what they are after the summer assessment, after this year, end of this year, what their needs are, what's the assessment are after the summer, so that we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of the parents, because there's an automatic assumption that the parents are capable. Many parents are not capable of participating in this process, and we need to know who those are. The concerns I have, what type of assessment are we doing? The other question I had, Ms. Betticelli, is can you tell me what does it mean to a student who regents are no longer required? In other words, the regents requirement was waived. So if I'm in the 9th grade and I didn't have to take algebra this year, does that mean I don't have to take it next year? Or do I have to take it? Or is it permanently waived? And what does that mean as far as for me academically? That I'm a little confused with. Can you explain to me what exactly means as far as for the student that's, you know, in high school or whatever?
Sure. So if a student passes a course that typically culminates in a Regents exam, they get this year, they will get credit for the Regents exam. It would, and in August as well. So if they're going to summer school because they need to earn that course credit, they can also get the credit because there is no August exam. Janelle could address this better than I could, but I don't believe it extends beyond that period. So right now, course credit would give you credit for the exam as well.
So you're saying the child still has to take the exam even though it wasn't required? Is that what you're saying? Or it's been waived?
No, it is waived if you get course credit. You don't have to take the exam because they're not.
Okay.
You have to pass the course.
Must pass the course. Okay. All right. Now that means that I don't have to take the exam credit, and so
I
that
gotta
look
get a 65 or higher on the course.
65 or higher. Okay. Thank you. What about the
There
idea
are
of
definite stipulations, and so they've released a detailed guidance document, and I'm sure that if you had specific questions, we could address those.
No, I just wanted to know because I'm trying to figure out the impact on going to look like for a child that's in the 9th grade and moving forward. So if they pass the course, then they don't have to take the exam. But if they have not, then in the future possibly they're going to have to take the exam. Yeah, I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now,
Yeah,
what
and
about this needs
just to
assessment?
be clear, Ms.
Mhm.
Common, just to be clear, there are some caveats for kids that have passed the exam, passed the course in the past. Like maybe you passed it last year, but you failed the exam. So again, there is a really specific document that spells out exactly who could get credit and who couldn't. But the general principle is if you pass the course this year, you would get credit for the exam because they're not offering the exam in June or August.
Okay. All right. And final question is health and wellness piece, the whole child focus on nutrition, wellness, and SEL. I attended one of the wellness seminars or whatever meetings that you had recently. And I'm going to reserve my thoughts until toward the end of this meeting in regards to what's going on there. But it was clear to me that our district to work, that our IT department needs to work with our community partners so that we can have an ideal deserts exist and where the voids are. And I am thinking of a Sanjay did where he showed us where all of our students were housed at in the city. And what I'm envisioning is that these community groups are working with our children, but somehow or another we have not gotten together and worked with them, and so that we know where the deserts are in our community. And I think it's important that we do that. So I'm going to sit back and wait until the end of this meeting and see if any of that is addressed before I go more into that. But I feel that there is a definite need that if we're going to deal with the whole child, that we have to deal with the whole community surrounding the child as well. Thank you.
Excuse me, President Belton Codman. That's one of our topics for educational support is with our food distribution plan, and we can go over that then.
But that's the food. I'm talking, there's more than just food that I'm concerned about, not just food.
Colleagues, with all respect, I mean, I agree with that, but don't forget that and part of the bargain, education bargain, the strong community schools were very carefully and thoughtfully planned out when we developed just what you're talking about. We did the demographics of the entire city. We looked at the high poverty zip codes. We looked at where the gang concentrations were in the city, the 25 largest gangs. We looked at food deserts. We looked at banking deserts where there are no ATMs or no banks. We looked at all of that, and that's where we placed our at this time, 21, we started off with 13 community schools. That was the whole purpose of the community schools. Now we have, I mean, that's really important to not forget. Not to forget
I haven't
that.
forgotten that. But what I'm trying to say is that this is a new time. We're going through a new time now, and the needs of children have heightened. And so what I'm just suggesting is that we have the tool, we have the ability to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the children at this time. I understand about the community
the best
school.
the best we can, and we'll do it smart. We'll do it smart. But one of the things I want you to do, board, on these committees is this is a two-way street. I agree wholeheartedly that we need to assess and find out what the parents need and what they know, what they can do, what they can't do, all of that. But it's a two-way street. You also got to tell us. You know, we have a parent congress. There's 5 major parent groups there. Jennifer mentioned about being a community. You know, you're out in the communities all the time. Feed that information into us. We put out a number of surveys for parents to respond to. And sometimes they don't get the numbers that we want to know. For example, with the computer devices, we put out a very comprehensive survey. And we got, I don't know, we had 900, but we were looking for who needs a device. And so we need help with the two-way communication. It's a both and. It's a both and. And then we can help and try to meet the needs as best we can. As best we can. But it's got to be a full partnership. Got to be a full partnership.
With that. I agree with that. But my point with that, Dr. Cash, I'm going to reiterate it one more time, is that in this environment, okay, and things have changed, and in our environment, the assessment of what our children needs are have grown. Want to make sure that when we use the term whole child focus, are making sure that we are aware.
Whole family, whole community.
Right, and I understand that.
Whole community.
Trying to criticize, what I'm trying to do is recommend that we take a deeper look where we are in this space and time and what else we can do to provide the needs and meet the needs of our student bodies. That's all.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, those are actually some of my concerns also, and other board members, but we'll try to soften that, but get a understanding about where we're at and what direction we're going to go in within the next couple of weeks or months or during a good time period. So we actually have to sit down and talk and meet about that. And Dr. Cash, I like that you said using help with communication and open communication. That's one thing that we need to get through this. Next hand I have is Jennifer McCosey.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm looking at where it says 7 to 12, right? And I'm wondering what actually constitutes as just the core area subjects, because what I see, which might be tied into what we're all looking for, what we just literally talked about, is I don't know whether or not health or physical education is included in any of these core subjects, because that right there, based on, you know, just having some type of PE, remote learning PE. My son is in physical therapy and he has a remote PT program that he's doing with that teacher. So that also assists with figuring out, you know, your mental, your social. It's kind of helping to see where folks are without having to create a whole nother level. And I don't know if it's already in there and it's just underlined in and other courses as appropriate, but social emotional learning is tied into mental health, stress management, trauma management. That's all tied into health and PE. So do we have those subjects that we're offering these older students who, are, especially our seniors that are truly going through some stress right now? Or are we covering them at all? Is that in the near future, or is that, it's just too much to take on at this point?
It's a fair question.
Excuse me.
And if you take if you could respond, and then I'll have some things to say about it. Go ahead, Ann.
So we know that every teacher takes into account a student's emotional well-being. So many of them will start their class with something like a circle. But what you're looking at there is specific to students who need to earn the credit or the unit of study. So in 7th and 8th grade, the 4 core would be English, math, science, and social studies, because those are the courses that could prevent promotion of a student to the next grade. And then in high school, we typically offer all the core courses, and then we might have to do a PE, or we might have a health class, depending on how many students need to recover that credit. So that is what you're seeing right now, is based more about the credits they need to move on as students. But I understand your question about emotional health and wellness. And so that's something we can talk about in like working with teachers to embed in their traditional class.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jennifer,
Thank you.
one of the challenges that we have is in this remote environment that we've just at the embryonic stages of remote learning. Do we provide all of the services that we provide during the traditional school day when schools were in session? That's been a big challenge, as you can imagine. Now, I think there's some kudo areas in that regard, and then there's some gap areas in that regard. And so for summer school, what I want to start doing is trying to simulate in several key areas what it would look like to start to transition back to brick and mortar. Now, I think Sharon's right. I think we are going to have to follow the science on this. There's so many things that we still don't even know about this disease that we're learning all of the time. For example, this pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome is frightening to me. It concerns me greatly, and we got to keep our eye on that. So I've actually been talking about board, and I would like to know your thoughts on this, having a health advisory board for our school system made up of local physicians, health experts. Doesn't have to be a lot of people, but maybe 4 to 6 top flight individuals to just be our consultants, be our advisors on when is it safe, when would it be safe to reopen, and how would we go about it, and what would be what would we have to have in place in order to do it safely and win the confidence of parents and all of our customers, staff included. So these are the kinds of oversight that we're going to need for this. So I don't know if we're going to be able to do all of the subject matter, is my point, in a summer school. But let's continue the discussion. See where you want to go with that, Jennifer.
Okay, excuse me, Dr. Cash. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that we had scheduled for the committee was about the pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome. But let's get to that in a moment. Right now, I do have a question. Our summer school budget, the normal summer school budget that we was previously under, how many teachers will we have available to teach under that budget as in normal years and as to now? I know we don't have an output of what the state is going to recommend for summer school, but can we get an understanding of how many teachers that we have available for lessons?
I don't think we know. At this time. That's usually an issue where we, you sign up based on contractual agreements and based on the need. We can give you a rough estimate of how many kids used to be, in our traditional programs, but I don't think we can give you an exact, a close number of how many teachers are going to be needed. We're going to need to see, for example, what this grading period yields. how many students get an incomplete, because they will be recommended for summer school. And then that number, of course, drives the number of teachers. We like to try to keep summer schools small, the class sizes small, if we can. That's one of the things we're learning in the remote environment. We also have to consider special education and ELL students, and what kind of summer school programs will we be providing for our special needs students. So those are all considerations we're talking about and thinking about and trying to plan, but we don't have the number of teachers that we're going to need. We could tell you how much it's cost in the past for the traditional programming, but that cost shouldn't be matched with a largely virtual program. It should be less expensive, but we'll see.
Okay, we're gonna go to Ann next, but quickly, another question. I did research other school districts, and what they found in school districts of our size was that we have classes that may teach English, but some kids may be far behind, and some kids may be at a different level. And another method that they used was to group the kids in the levels that they're at and have a teacher teach them at that level. So a child may not be taught just from one school, but he may be taught, may go to another program and learn at the level where kids at his level, so that he can keep his confidence in learning and education. So we can also, and Mrs. Monticelli, to look into a situation like that we can actually work with children on a level that they're at, instead of just plug them into a normal class that they're at, to try to push them through, or try to get them, not push them, I'm sorry, to try to get them through and at a learning rate which they're not accustomed to, or may not be able to relate to. That's one of the things.
We're looking at that, Terrence. We're looking at that. That's a suggestion I've made to the team, to start looking more at grouping by where the children are, regardless of age. That's one consideration when you're talking remote. It could be an advantage. And then on the other end, for high school students, trying to get some of the best teachers at their content, who are motivating, enthusiastic, really, really experts in the field, teaching some of these courses that students may have failed or gotten behind in. What if they all had at a certain grade level, one or several great teachers teaching global 1, for example, or algebra 2, or English 1, and that just takes it to a whole nother level. See, and they're getting great content by our best teachers. I mean, those are some of the things that I see that we can do going forward pretty quickly. Actually, may have to do some contractual pieces, but we still, I think that's an advantage of the remote environment that we haven't taken advantage of. And the other is to go fast. You can go faster. I don't know why we have to hold kids back going forward. If they can go faster and get through material and ace it, so to speak, and move on. This whole grade by age lockstep, it's time to re-envision that. So your questions are pertinent. We appreciate them. We'll keep adding them into the mix.
Okay, for hands, I have Dr. Rivera and then Lou Petrucci.
I'd like to just respond to Dr. Cash and say I really support the idea of a health board giving advice about how we handle students, because we have students who are particularly fragile medically, and otherwise we have staff and community members that we want to protect as well. And I would heartily support something like that. The second comment I wanted to make was towards thinking about how to do universal design. And the idea of universal design is this idea of how to group students and meet needs in one classroom, but also design in meeting needs in breakout sessions too, which is some of what Dr. Cash was talking about. So I hope that our ad hoc committee can look at some of those opportunities in order to meet different student needs.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Petrucci.
Thank you, Terrence. Appreciate it. I'll guess 2 points. Dr. Cash, I was glad to hear you speak about trying to sever the connection between age and achievement. At some points there's a little correlation, but for many of our students, the ability to free them to take more challenging courses or to get the additional help that they need, I think is the right path to go down. Secondly, I'm just concerned about our summer school in terms of capacity and whether or not if we have this grand demand, because everyone's been getting home instruction for so long, that parents might want to partake of summer school, would be able to scale it up if we had a lot of people that reached out and want their children or students that want additional enrichment type of classes over the summer.
I think that's the right question. That's certainly a concern we have, but we're gonna try to get ready. I don't know what the economy will be like in the summer. I don't know who will need to go to work, almost irregardless at that point. But so many folks are struggling economically, as you know, and I don't know what the teachers' expectations are going to be for their normal so-called summer when they're not engaged in instruction and are doing something with their own children, as they have been, all along. But many of our teachers, many of our staff, I certainly know my executive team, and then they tell me about their staff, and I know the teachers have been working overtime. I mean, many of us work constantly on this work, so somebody's going to need a shift break at some point, So I don't know if we can meet the demand yet, Lou. In short, until I know who will want to teach summer school and what the demand will be, actually, because not everybody wants to teach summer school, at least in the traditional time. Maybe during this time they will. I don't know, because they know that their children will need it. But that's sort of an unknown for us right now, and we'll know more within a month or so.
All right, thank you.
But it's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if President Belton Cotton hand is still raised, but we have Kathy Evans Brown.
Thank you.
And President Cotman.
Okay, so similar to President Cotman, talk about the high literacy rate here in the city of Buffalo. And you talk about staff development for remote learning for teachers and staff. Is it a possibility to provide that same kind or similar training to parents when we talk about remote training and or instruction? That's a possibility that could help them to help their children. And then I was thinking about with some of our most vulnerable children, I know at the Buffalo Urban League, we have provided tutors with some of these families who are struggling, balancing between working and homeschooling. And it has been important to the students as well as the teachers, because they're commending the tutors, that they're happy to see that some of these tutors are involved, because you do have a certain amount of parents, and I'm gonna put it out there, that do not follow through in terms of responsibility in terms of helping the children get their work in. I mean, that's a reality. And so I know I'm saying a lot, but the point I want to make is I think parents need that training as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Dr. Brown. And what I would say is there are many ways to address that on an ongoing basis. But we have our, 5th annual Parent Summit coming up at the end of this month. And I know I've been in discussion with Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Williams about some of the topics. And I think this ought to be a major focus for the Parent Summit. We always go into breakout sessions, and a whole host of topics are addressed at the Parent Summit each year. But I think, training parents and offering training in remote instruction and some tips and best practices and ways to support the child, I think is a great idea, and it certainly is a need. So I'm going to recommend that to staff, and let's see what we can do as early as the Parents Summit later this month in about 2 weeks, and then keep it going throughout the summer. Keep it going. There's so much you can do now with remote professional development, remote learning professional development. I think we've had over 3,000 courses taken by our teachers, our principals, for example. And so now let's move that into the parent world. But again, it's a partnership, so we can offer, but you gotta help us get people to come drink at the river.
Okay, we don't have any more hands. Thank you, Dr. Cash, on that report. The last thing I'd like to ask, the question pertaining to the summer school was our seniors that's graduating that or don't have enough credits to graduate, and if it's possible, what's being done. I know that it's a very vague area to try to figure out who need what course, but to help them get along to graduate this year, so that they can maybe go into a collegiate.
That's a primary focus, and all staff are working on that issue, Terrence. Trying to get them to June or August graduation. Our aim is 100% of the senior class.
Thank you, sir. I think you have a little feedback from somebody.
I better know. Don't have enough credits to graduate, and if it's possible, what's being, it's a very big area to try to figure out who needs what.
We might have a little audio problem right now, a little feedback.
Okay.
Is Mr. Lucci, can you address that, or?
Yeah, it's better now. Okay, what was the second topic, Terrence? Was that the anti-bullying?
Okay, the second part is that was the Health and Advisory Board. I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Cash, because I'm in full support of that. And I was hoping that we could have somebody on tonight that can talk more about the new epidemic that's going on. We got over 100 kids right now in New York State that's been diagnosed with the pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome, and that it is affecting children. We don't have a report of is there any children in Western New York that was affected, or if it's coming this way, or what the wave looks like. But we know that children are going under distress. Some of the reports say that they have heart attack type syndromes, symptoms, and they also have it doesn't have the same effects that the COVID virus had, but most of the kids did have the COVID virus, and it's not coming on as like a flu, but just coming on as symptoms, as heaviness in the chest and trouble breathing, and then it escalates. We know that we lost 3 kids already, 3 children already, not local to this disease. But we just want to have an update on that the parents know that we have a concern about this and how will we be addressing this also. If you could just go on a little bit about that. And this is one thing I think that what you said, that the Health Advisory Board will be able to come on and speak about in the future. And I believe that'll be necessary to have maybe them speak to parents or on television and news media sources, so that on behalf of the district, so that we can let the parents know that we are trying to address the issues and working towards a better future.
Well, we're certainly concerned about that. This disease has new wrinkles coming at us seemingly weekly. So the medical community is very, very concerned. They're on professional conferences all the time talking about it and trying to figure out its etiology and its effects. So we'll be certainly monitoring that and following that. And I think it's a good idea to have some health professionals come at a future date as this evolves and progresses. So that's about all I can tell you. We're concerned, but at this point, I'm hearing that it's all treatable, and that there's things that we can do about it. But I don't know enough about it, and we'll talk about it in the future.
Okay.
What I had on my agenda was 3 topics, and the next one was anti-bullying update. That's what I
I'm
have
sorry,
on my
I
agenda.
do have a hand raised. We can get there first. We have Kathy Evans Brown. Is your hand still raised, Kathy, or?
That was a
Okay,
mistake.
President Belton Cotman
And so,
and Paulette Woods.
so is it possible that we can at least post something on our website about this this inflammatory syndrome? I can share with you that I had a son who had Kawasaki syndrome. And had I not got him to the hospital, very high fever, had I not gotten him to the hospital the first day, I have been able to diagnose what he had. Second day, everything was out of control. It's real important. If it's happening in New York City, it's just a matter of time. This is way down the road, that we can at least post that this is something that is very serious. When I first went to the hospital, they told me that my son had the flu, 104-degree temp flu. And so had we not gone that day and they done some blood work, et cetera, the next day when we went, his liver was completely out of control. And at 13, he had to go and have an extensive physical to make sure that his heart and his brain had not been damaged. So this I was told at the time was a simple cold in certain countries like Malaysia and the Philippines. In the States, it's a big thing. For it to have piggybacked on top of this virus is huge. And if we can just at least put a warning up for parents to understand that this is out there so that they can at least be educated, because you don't get that child to the hospital in a very short window. The child does not have an opportunity to survive. And my son was in the hospital for 15 days behind this syndrome. So I just wanted to share that I personally know that this is nothing to play with. And if we can at least post something about it on our website, at least parents can be aware that it exists. Because it's not the typical flu. And I just wanted to.
I believe we can do something to that effect. I think we can do something. Dr. Williams, Tanja, if you could work on a brief Q&A around what we know at this point about the PMIS, then let's get that up somewhere on our homepage.
Okay.
All right, colleagues. Mr. Hurd,
okay,
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go to the bullying, anti-bullying.
Okay, just going real quickly, I believe this is a pressing issue, and we still had another hand raised on that. I don't want to not call on someone who has a concern. So we have
Terrence.
Yes, we have Paulette Woods.
I just wanted to mention that while you're talking about the health task force and having experts, can we add a couple people on that task force for mental health issues? We do have concerns being raised at these wellness hearings and being raised in the community that there's an increase in suicides. Their children are really being affected by, they don't know if they're going to die tomorrow. And also, we've lost 300 people in Erie County, and some of them are parents of our children. So there's grief counseling. They haven't been able to go out and play. They haven't been able to greet their teachers. Their normal life has just been totally disrupted. So can we add on that panel of experts some mental health people, because our children need some trauma issues addressed.
Yeah, that might be a little different function than what I have in mind for this particular piece, but certainly I hear your concern, and we do need to have ongoing trauma support and mental health support for our children. So we'll weave that into our work. It may not be this particular health advisory board that does it, but we'll certainly take note of it. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cash. And we do have notes about the COVID. We will go ahead and move on to the next subject that's listed. It'll be the anti-bullying BPS website update and the inclusion of the gang initiative, anti-gang initiative.
So, colleagues, we'll give you our best update in a succinct way that Dr. Williams has been leading and other staff have been involved. I thought we were making some really good progress on this work. I remember Hope was influential in pressing forward this work for us. And then, of course, COVID hit, and a lot of things took a back burner. I won't say we stopped altogether, but I will give you up to date where we are, and then where we intend to continue to push forward. I am concerned about some of the online bullying that I'm hearing about, and maybe there's a segue piece that we could find a way to be helpful to our staff and to our families, because it's, again, some of that was happening in brick and mortar, and now we see some of it happening, and I'm certainly hearing about it during the remote learning environment as well. So I think it's a very relevant topic, and let's hear about where we are and where we could go. Tanja, are you there?
I am.
Okay, go ahead, Tanja.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Dr. Cash. I'm going to give a brief, but I hope very comprehensive update on some of the work that has happened in a short period of time with anti-bullying. Just as a foundational piece, there was quite a bit of work that happened for like a year before August, that really started with my predecessor, Dr. Eric Rosser, and board member Hope J. And they worked very closely with Judge Brenda Friedman, who's an Erie County Family Court judge, Dr. Nickerson, who is a faculty expert, I believe, at the University at Buffalo on school bullying, Ben Hilligus, Judy Gerber. There's a young man, Justin Hernandez, who did a lot of work with the committee, and Jeff Banks, who's one of our BPS principals, and Nicole Bicina. And this group met. It was an Erie County Juvenile Justice group, and they did a lot of research and peeling of layers by experts to come up with some recommendations that they thought might support our district. So fast forward to August of 2019, when they came before the board, I believe, and did a presentation, an overview of all of the work that has been done. And they asked our Board of Education and district and school staff to consider 5 recommendations to implement that would help us with addressing issues of bullying. And I believe you see before you in a blue box, there are the 5 recommendations that they asked for us to consider. The first was to address highest risk populations for bullying. They took a look at our YRBS data 2 years ago and found that there were certain populations of students that self-reported that they felt they were at a higher risk for being bullied. The second was convening a standing committee of collaborative stakeholders, but that it would be led by BPS to move the work forward. The third was to implement a DASA best practice piece. The fourth would have been to build positive cultures through relationships and partnerships. And the fifth was to integrate the very important voice of our students in any bullying prevention facets. So within the last 7 months, between August of 2019 and March of 2020, you'll see listed under that blue box some of the work that has continued. And so back in October, we sent an entire team to be trained by the UB Alberti Center which is a center that focuses on school violence and bullying. And they brought in an international bully prevention expert. And this team of 8 BPS staff, there were coaches, and there were administrators from the Department of Student Support Services, received training from Dr. Dorothy Ethledge, and I believe she is on faculty at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. She's written some books, and she is considered to be one of the experts in this area. And so they received that training, and from there, that was in October, we also facilitated a district-wide bully prevention awareness month campaign, because bullying is one of those things we know, it's kind of gray. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's uncomfortable when adults see it. And so we're trying very much to pull the rug back from that. And so we want all of our children and our staff aware of what bullying looks like. It's not always physical. There are times there is cyberbullying, there's relational bullying, there's emotional, social, verbal bullying. And so we wanted, everyone in schools to be aware that, they need to become upstanders and not bystanders. So we did things in a developmental, comprehensive way. It took a lot of work to do it, because we certainly wanted our early childhood schools activities they participated in to look differently than our high schools. So we had door decorating contests and those kinds of things for younger students. We had guest speakers. We had the poster signs where there were pledges against bullying. We did all of that in October. From there was an incident that happened locally, and it got a lot of media coverage. And Mr. Banks, Principal Banks, and myself were asked to come in and to do an interview with Channel 7 News about, the district stance on bullying and what are some of the things that we're doing. And so we were able to come in and share some of the good work that, again, this Erie County Juvenile Justice group that came up with these recommendations had been doing. And we talked specifically about some of the things that we do in our district to try to mitigate bullying. So from there, Dr. Cash shared that he wanted us to come together and to create to convene a team, if you will, that would operationalize bullying so that everybody would know what is it, what's the definition for it? Because it's one of those things that, again, there's a fine line between bullying and a conflict. And so he wanted a team to be brought together. And so Dr. Brown Hall and myself convened a team of district and school leaders. And we did a lot of work looking at different researches, hearing narratives, experiences, because bullying is also one of those things that's very personal. And so sometimes, if any of us have experienced bullying, and it wasn't resolved, it comes right back like it happened yesterday, or if our children have incurred it. So we did a lot of talk around narratives, what is bullying? What should a definition include? And after we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked, we went back to what that committee, that Erie County Juvenile Justice and Buffalo Public Schools Committee had come up with. And
I'm sorry, Dr. Williams, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. If we can move the screen up so that who don't have a printout can see the bottom of the bullet points that you're talking about. We could just move the screen up some.
Okay, Mr. Lucci, are you able to do that?
Thank you.
Okay,
perfect, right there. Okay.
I apologize,
Okay.
Dr. Williams, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. So you'll notice at the top of the document, there is a definition. We wanted it to be clear, concise, but we knew we had to frame for our principals, for our parents, for our students, and for us too, exactly what is bullying. And so I'll read it. It's a form of unwanted aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance and that is repeated. And that's the key piece. It's repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. So we wanted to make sure that, all of our staff know and understand exactly what bullying is. It may not necessarily just be a conflict between two children. And so we convened that committee, we did a lot of work, and we came out with that. On the committee, we also, in addition to hearing narrative and, talking through what the Juvenile Justice Committee had done in their report, we investigated our data. We took a look at our data over the last several years and what trends the data was showing and what patterns the data showed. Actually, what our data showed is that reports of bullying are not all that high for the school district. And so we again began to talk, and we talked with some of our principals. And what we realized is that, number one, sometimes, in a building, things happen so quickly that you resolve it, you move on, and, it's just not coded necessarily as bullying because it's two students that had a conflict. And, as the leader or as the counselor, it's resolved and you move on. And so we knew from that small committee that we've got work to do to begin to not just think it's resolved, because sometimes children can, show you that it's resolved when it's not really resolved, and it goes deeper and you get into things then like cyberbullying and that kind of thing. So, we know that, the incidents we believe may be higher than what is necessarily being reported, but our trends show that actual coding of bullying is not necessarily all that high, or had not been over the last 3 years. We, to help us to address, when bullying is happening currently, or at least before March, there was one data coordinator per school building, and that was the principal. And we all know that the role of a principal is huge in a school building. And so one of the recommendations that this committee came up with was more of a team approach. And so it did not necessarily have to just be the principal, but it could be a co-designee that bullying issues were referred to. And when they're referred to this co-person, they're experts in the school buildings themselves that are trained and can spend the time to really peel layers and see, what's really going on and how they can help to make any instances of bullying teachable moments. So we implemented a best practice that the role of a DASA coordinator will no longer just be the principal. We did a training with principals and assistant principals back in March, 2 months ago, and asked principals for their feedback. How did they feel about it? And they were very receptive to sharing that role. And so we didn't want to determine who that person should necessarily be, an assistant principal or a counselor. We asked them, in their buildings, because in some buildings, it's the teacher assistant that may have capital throughout that building, throughout that neighborhood. So we asked them to select a person in the building that could spend some time getting trained on what a DASA coordinator role is, that had some capital in the building, and would have the skill set to peel layers and work with children that have experienced bullying. And so our school leaders returned to me who they selected in their buildings and their titles to receive that training, which will be coming up this summer for those DASA coordinators. We're making sure we're in the process of translating every single document that we post on bullying, any presentations that are done. We want them posted. And so Nadia and Nashir worked very hard with our small group committee on making sure that when we need that kind of support, that there's a fast track to have that happen. The next piece is alignment, and that's huge. Bullying, we did not want schools, principals, or teachers, or parents to feel like, here we go with another initiative. This is something that's intersected already in everything that we're doing. So we wanted, any trainings that we're providing, any documents, whatever we're doing, to align with the work that we're already doing with our DSIP process, our district committee of school and comprehensive improvement plans, our restorative practice piece, our CLRI, our code of conduct, character counts, trauma-informed care, and ELA. There is vocabulary that can be taught to students that has to do with bullying. So we didn't want it to be just a separate thing, but we really want it to be something that intersects with everything that's happening in the building. So as we're building out this training for our DASA coordinators, for our parents, for our teachers, it will be infused, all of these pieces will be infused in it. And so we, in addition to that, made sure that our student voice, because they're really the ones that are experiencing it. And so we didn't want to come up, what we thought, bullying looked like or what experiences were. And so for every single inter-high meeting, and they met monthly between October and March, we had folks come in and provide them training on being an upstander, not a bystander. And the expectation was that each of those high school students would then go back to their buildings and do a turnkey training and work with their principals to share out, what that month entailed, what the discussion was at each of those monthly meetings. So we also, for the committee, came up with a progressive discipline process that is in alignment with the code of conduct. So again, every time we're looking at things and creating pieces, we make sure that it's aligned with what we have. So when bullying happens, it should not automatically be a long-term suspension, depending on the severity and depending on, if there has been a pattern. But if it's a first-time offense or a first-time situation that can be resolved, it could be an opportunity for both students to grow, to learn, develop empathy. And so there is a progressive discipline process that we all talked and agreed upon, which ranges, and I think it's listed there. There are 10 pieces that go from a parent conference all the way through to a long-term suspension. But we want to start off getting our parents involved. And so we created an operational manual, and I believe it is up on our website. And it's a step-by-step manual on what happens, what's step one. If bullying is reported to a teacher or if it's seen, what do they do? Who do they tell? So we put a lot of work in with respect to that. So we had done all of these pieces, and then COVID-19 hit. And so there are some pieces that you'll see at the very bottom that we had already planned to continue, and we will continue in spite of this COVID-19. So we know that providing information has to continue in a different way now. And so, we want to start with our parent Congress. They're a group that, is really interested in the work of the district on behalf of all children, not just their children. They're very interested. And we want to start with a training for them and to share the report with them and share where we are in the work with them. So we want to continue to inform. We know that now more than ever, the website has become an educational tool. So, things that we're posting, we have to be mindful that, again, they're translated into all languages, and we have to make the connection for our parents and community that this is not just another thing, but it is aligned to every single thing that we're doing. We recently, this year, did our YRBS again, so there will be new data that will be coming out. So the data that drove this committee from 2017 will be updated for 2020. The data was collected in 2019. So we, more than anything, want to get the feedback from our parents, from our community. We held quarterly meetings with community stakeholders, those folks that are working in our schools, and we feel it's important that they know what the initiatives are in the district. So we spent some time, I believe it was at the February meeting, talking about the bullying, the anti-bullying work that has been happening. And so we'll continue to, move that forward. The last two pieces kind of go together in streamlining and building capacity. When you have 60 school buildings, we know that the district needed a single person or department that principals could come to if they had questions, needed training. And so that department has been identified as the Department of Social Emotional Wellness, and we're building capacity. We have a project administrator too that has received a lot of training. She was boots on the ground working with this, and she's very passionate about moving this work forward. So, Ms. Vicina will be a person that, is working real closely with helping to lead this effort. And we are at a place, this is board member Hope J, and she suggested to myself some folks that we might want to consider for a larger group. We're at a point now where the smaller group has done some of the focused work, and now it's time to expand that committee to a larger group to include community members, parents, security, our curriculum assessment and instruction department, so that again, it's not a separate thing, it's something that's intersected with everything. So that's just a little bit about where we are in that work, but I hope you can see that there's been a lot that has happened in a very short period of time between August and March. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanja.
Dr. Williams, I'd like to thank you for your report. You did a extensive report as far as reaching out to the University of Buffalo and working with Dr. Dorothy Asquith from over University of North Carolina. Those things that I wasn't aware of, but I would like to keep that open channel so that the board would know more about what's going on and how the district is responding, because as you know, I'm involved with a lot of youth groups, and we all know that bullying has a lot of effects. Bullying, it changes lives, it changes grades, it changes families, and it's one of the major causes of leading for school dropouts, and also for disruption that's in the classrooms. We also know that that it changes the households. Sometimes it leads to a funeral home, for one or another reasons. Things happen to children, that now they begin to learn how to speak about, and through the programs and the research that you're doing, children are learning that they can't speak about these issues and come forward to have somebody they can come to. And I would love working with Hope J to see this district come to a means that we can get out that scenario of snitching, that the kids use the term snitching, telling on one another, or not considered as being a punk if you go to an adult to say that you're being bullied or harmed. And these are the things that we have to teach, I believe, from pre-K all the way through, so that we can change the narrative, change the scope of the thoughts of our children, how they move forward with bullying and going through. Now, we have a couple of hands raised. One is Hope J. I'll let her go first. This is our committee.
Thank you, Terrence. Tanja, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for doing this. I wasn't even aware that this was happening until I saw the email from Darren about an hour ago. So thank you for putting this together. Judge Friedman's going to be very happy. Yeah. Yeah. So just a couple of things that I wanted to add to the presentation that you gave. Number one, the larger group that you mentioned, that was actually a recommendation that came from the anti-bullying task force. It was one of the recommendations that they had made very early on when they wanted to pass the torch to the Buffalo Public Schools to continue doing the work. One of the recommendations was to involve people from all different disciplines, inside and outside of the actual school community, so that we can, implement best practices and stay on top of the recommendations that were already made by the task force. So my question is, I know that was something that was brought up at our last anti-bullying task force meeting, and I know you weren't able to be at that, but I know I sent you a pretty comprehensive email afterward. Have you been able to identify who those people are, and do we have any sort of an idea how we're going to pull that together in the age of COVID?
So yes, we have identified approximately 20 to 25 people that we would like to do an initial Zoom conference with, and the dates, we have a couple of dates in early June and one for late May. So I'm planning to have I think it's called a doodle doc or something like that sent out to see which date most folks are able to make it.
Okay,
So yes,
I'm really happy to hear that we've identified who those people are, and they've all been contacted and they're all willing to participate, Tanja?
I think there were 2 or 3. Nicole's been contacting them that she said were, she's waiting to hear back from, but most, yeah. It's a pressing issue, and people, absolutely are concerned and want to participate. And to Mr. Hurd's piece about the awareness, that's really important also, and that's what the whole October bully awareness piece was on. Not being a bystander, but speaking up and changing a culture where, bullying is not cool, but speaking up is. And so we're working to try to change that narrative.
Okay, so just make sure that I get an invite to that one, okay? Because I need to be on that committee. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Second, the other point that I wanted to make was a recommendation that was made again at the last task force meeting that we had. It was a Zoom meeting that we had about 3 weeks ago. Was to, there's not when we recognize that there's we can't do the work in the same way that we were doing it when we were all in the buildings. So one of the things that was brought up by Amanda Nickerson, and I thought it was a really great idea, was that, and you did sort of touch on this, but I just want to flesh it out a little. She had said that we need to really, reach out to our parent groups and to try and identify people who want to get trained. Because Amanda is she's the preeminent expert on this, and she's more than willing to work with us to provide training to our parents and our parent group leaders so that we can develop some online, again, in the age of COVID, we want to develop some online training to our BPS community so that, we can disseminate this information in a way that people are able to get it. So I know you were going to talk to, or maybe Nicole was going to talk to the leaders of our parent groups. Do you know what happened with that?
Well, they're willing. She shared with me that there were only a couple that she's just waiting to hear from, and they were not necessarily parents. So I believe that our parent Congress, we had a meeting, and they're very interested in supporting the district. We have a stakeholders meeting that's coming up. They're very interested in supporting the district and, learning and, in any way that they can. And this is a pressing, it's a very important issue. We know that the impact is deep. It's very deep on bullying. So I am sure, I can't say for certain that we will have all 5 parent leader members there, but I know that there will be representation from the parent Congress. Sometimes they will identify 1 or 2 to kind of be the lead, and they may do that with this, but I know that the voice of the parents will certainly be an important voice for that committee.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not sure, maybe I wasn't clear. Yeah, no, I definitely want the parents involved in the committee, but I was talking more specifically with regard to training. If you recall, there was a suggestion that Amanda, in conjunction with some other people, that they were willing to do like an online training for BPS. They were willing to do that, and we were trying to get some leaders, parent leaders, together to talk to them so that we could figure out. We could potentially have 50 people on a Zoom conference, and we have this wonderful resource at our fingertips, Amanda Nickerson. So that's what we were trying to figure out, is how we could organize a training.
Yeah. So I know that, there was some discussion about having some of our parent leaders be kind of trainers, if they wanted to go through a train-the-trainer piece.
Right.
So that's something that, you know, we would need to discuss, you know, with the parents. I know, again, with parents, it's, you know, it's a challenging time right now. You know, they're trying to keep up with, you know, the academic pieces, and, you know, especially our parent Congress leaders are, you know, working with us. So we certainly will, you know, make that request. But I can't confirm that they will actually be trainers, but I believe that we will have some parents that are willing to be trained. And, you know, maybe they're not necessarily parent Congress members, but we did a presentation last night for the DPCC, which is, you know, one of the groups. So it may not necessarily be the leader of the DPCC who agrees to, but she may, you know, have members of her constituent group that want, you know, the training, because ideally we want to have as many as possible. And I think you're right that, you know, with this platform, this online platform, you know, it's limitless. You know, they can receive the training, and hopefully the training can be posted so that they're able to go on at their leisure and, you know, receive the training. So I think we will, you know, that's something that's a priority, and that's one of the pieces that's listed at the bottom on continuing to inform. You know, this bargain is all about, as Dr. Cash keeps saying, you know, it's our parents, it's our community, and it's us. So it's huge that, you know, that we work closely with our parents on the training piece. So I know with Dr. Nickerson, you know, she is absolutely highly regarded, highly knowledgeable about, you know, bullying, and she was a huge asset. And I do hope that, you know, she would be willing to do the training. You know, a couple of, you know, the ask, I think, is just, you know, to convene a small group so that she's aware kind of the initiatives that Ms. Botticelli and Dr. Fatima Morel is involved in, so that we can make the training kind of tailored for Buffalo. But, you know, that's just something that, you know, that I'm hoping we can, you know, take a look at and do.
Tanja.
Yes.
Consider also including Dr. Nickerson in the Parent Summit. There's another session that we could have where she would be featured. There's going to be, we've had over 1,000 parents attend our Parent Summit. This year, we can have even more attending online. So let's put her into that session.
That's
and
a
then
great
go
idea.
from there.
That's a great idea. We'll reach out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, next we have, I believe going in order, was Jennifer McCosey, then Larry Scott, then President Belton Cotman.
Actually, I was next.
You're next?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, the order's the
Okay.
other way.
Yeah.
Okay, respectfully, yeah, I just got hands up on the screen. So respectfully, Sharon Belton Cotman. Then
Okay, I
next
just
will
want be brief. So I just want to be clear. Had a meeting in executive affairs, and we talked about the possibility of generating revenue. One of the biggest resources that I can remember this district receiving revenue from was the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We with that, because normally around this time we would have some idea of what actually is going on with our students, and that money in the past has been used for grants and for justification for all sorts of things. That research that's associated with that. Where are we with that? Because it looks like we're a little off of, I know everything is crazy because of what's going on, but has that, have we had that reviewed yet? I remember that grant. That grant has an assessment piece in there as well. And I'm just trying to find out where are we with that assessment, because in the past we would at least know that the grant had been done. And that's very important, because if you guys are working on bullying, we want to know if the impact has improved or not. And so that's that tool that has been used in the past. And if I can remember right, I can think of about 3 or 4 different sources or revenues that we received as a result of that grant over the years. So I'm just curious to know, where are we with that? Because when you brought it up, it flicked in my mind, hey, we haven't heard anything about that.
Right, you're absolutely right that the data that we get from that particular survey is used throughout the district. And I know that we worked together on one grant that we got, I believe, a year ago, the mental health awareness grant, and it was specifically the data that came from that survey. So I know that the survey has been completed, but again, when COVID hit, it, you know, things got a little bit on the back burner, but I believe, are at a point where we are looking we're putting out an RFP to get it all, you know, assessed and get it in a document so that we can bring it forward to the superintendent and the board. So it's not off the back burner. It's just that when COVID hit, you know, it slowed things down just a little bit. But the survey has gone out to the schools. The students have taken the survey. Now we need someone to compile and, you know, disaggregate all of the data that's come in from, you know, our thousands of students. So the next step is getting the RFP out to, you know, get someone that is able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When was the survey given, Tanja?
In the fall, we started. It was between, I believe, October and December.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
need that information if you want more money, and we need more revenue, so we need that information.
Yes, we do.
Amen.
Okay, we have Jennifer McCosey and Larry Scott.
Hi, I definitely wanted to, I'm just saying, Sharon, you completely covered a lot of what I was going to get into, especially around revenue generating, but then where is that data? And, you know, I know it comes to us a little sooner than where we have it now. I also just want to throw my hat in the ring when you're talking about needing folks to be able to help train. I don't know what legalities that is, but I am a certified trainer, and I'd love to be able to join the team if necessary, if you need some trainers to help, you know, just communicate to folks. I am a parent as well, so I just want to offer that if you're down, you know, you're down somebody, I can help with that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Scott.
I just want to add to the parent piece in regards to Dr. Nickerson. She is phenomenal. She's the expert in bullying, and I'm wondering post pandemic if she could be worked in to our parent center workshops with Dr. Reynolds. And also maybe she could be a guest on one of the virtual parent center workshops that Dr. Reynolds, and I think Dr. Williams, you've also been hosting. I think this Thursday, Ms. Botticelli's doing one on grading and instructional practices. I think it would be great to feature Dr. Nickerson for one of those. And then just lastly, I need to share, since we're on the topic of like social emotional wellness, my son right now is in the other room with his first grade class on a Zoom meeting, having a pajama party with his class and his two teachers. And the teacher's right now reading them a story. So it's just a perfect example of our staff going out of the way to, you know, not only meet the academic needs of our kids, but the social emotional needs of our kids.
Nice. Which go far, which go very, very far, because our children are relational learners. So yeah, that's excellent. So yeah, I think that is actually an excellent.
Larry, I want to hear more about that. I don't know.
I do too. I want to know who the teacher is. Jared.
I want to know what's going on over there, Larry.
Share who the teacher is.
6. Is it Montessori?
7:56, right? Wow.
Montessori.
Don't put her on blast. Don't put her on
Why
blast.
not? She's going beyond the call of duty. She's one of our frontline workers.
Yeah, but
That's
we
right.
don't know what's going on. We better find out first.
Yeah.
Good example.
Okay.
Good example. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Last thing, in this subject, we have. I know one of our Breaking Barrier kids, Dwayne Sawyer, was supposed to be placed into the anti-bullying campaign as one of the members. And as of now, he's still waiting for a call. So if you can reach out to him, when you move forward. This also goes to Dr. Tanja Williams because he's one of our youth. And I don't know if anybody here ever experienced bullying before, but I have, growing up in the city, we fought constantly all the time. Every week, it was fights to where, we had groups of kids circling you to make sure that you fought. And I've seen things like this and been through this. And these experienced kids shouldn't have to go through to get education. And like I said, one of the causes for kids to drop out of school or have mental disorders. And it's also, it's not only affect them, affect the parents also. Sometimes kids see it in their homes and, they want to come and talk about it. And we experience this in the youth groups, they are beginning to come and talk about the situations that they experience, what they've been in, what they're going through, what their friends are going through. And we can't take this lightly. And thank you, Dr. Williams, for all of the work that you're doing right now. But also, we have to find a way to tie the anti-gang initiative into this also. There's so much work being done, and it's so closely related because bullying leads to gang violence. It leads to gang initiation. It leads to things being done to kids that shouldn't be done or normally wouldn't be done. Even in sports, joining a team, we find bullying and different things that kids are asked to do by other children. And so what we need to do is find that. We already had a support meeting about the anti-gang initiative or end of last year. And I would like to tie this together somehow, put this in the same department, make a department for this so that we can work with the anti-gang initiative at the same time, and we can actually work on two different things at one time. So if anybody have any questions about that, I would also like to invite Dr. Williams for the work that you're doing. If any meetings that's coming forward, please email me. I would love to join in and see how I personally can work in with this, and I'm sure other board members as well.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing about this is that we had concerns about the web page that haven't been updated. Some parents actually looked onto it, and I looked on it also, and it wasn't updated as of recently, but for the anti-bullying. And do we have an update on the web page itself with the district?
So I know that some things went up, I believe, either yesterday or the day before yesterday. So, again, we will continue to update our webpage to reflect things that are changing. Like now we have the code DASA designees in buildings. It's not just the principal. We want all of our school parents and, learning communities to know that if there are issues with respect to bullying, they don't necessarily have to get to the principal. There's another person in the building that, that they can also get to. And so there is a presentation that I know that Ms. Lysina worked very hard on and is working with Ms. Nashir to get translated, and that will be put up if it's not already done. So that's kind of going to be, an ongoing process, us continuously updating the website.
Okay, what I'm asking you, Dr. Cash, is to have a button on the front page that a parent can press that they don't have to go through the website and search for it. That if there's a problem, because a lot of our suspensions are due to bullying, and we have a large number of suspensions.
There is a
pardon me?
There is a bullying link right on the front page, on the main page of the district.
That goes directly to the bullying and go directly to gang violence?
It goes to bullying and harassment.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I haven't seen that, but let's also adapt the anti-gang initiative to it, and we can get a committee together to lead that also if we need to go that route. Let's work on that, but this is all hand in hand with education and our classrooms, the control of our classrooms and our graduation rates within our district. We also lose kids to other schools, feel that they got better protection or a better education at some schools. And we don't want to go to that option either. So they think that it'll be a parent might think it's a better option someplace else. I know that we provide the best possible education, the best learning environment as part of our motto, and we will continue with that, please.
So I just wanted to share that when you go to the homeschool webpage, if you scroll down, there's a section that says Find It Fast. and there is right there bullying and harassment, and
Yep.
just click on that, and there are resources that link will take you to on how to file any kind of an incident, a little bit of information about some of the things I talked about. There's an FAQ document, and it's been translated in several different languages. So it's a robust, I mean, it's, you know, it's continuing, but, you know, there's quite a few resources that are listed on that webpage.
Okay, I'm on it now, taking a look. Okay, I'll definitely go back and research it again. I know the website is forever changing. You guys doing a 24-hour work on the website, and I thank you.
Yes.
Terrence, I just need to ask Tanja a quick question.
Okay.
Tanja, can you do me a favor in this? I see a slide that you have up on the screen here that kind of summarizes the presentation that you gave tonight. Can you either send that to me or send it to the task force, the group, so that they know that this presentation was done and what was covered?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Terrence, can you hear me? Are we frozen?
It looks like we lost.
I think when he left this webpage, he got lost.
Yeah.
It appears to be a problem.
Yeah. Colleagues, this is another topic where you've mentioned several times already this evening, where we need to be in partnership with our parents around this issue. So the etiology of bullying can have a number of sources. So I think, again, this is a topic for parent training as well. And let's include that as part of our work in this space.
Thank you. Let me see if any more hands are raised. I'm sorry, I got kicked off for a second.
I have food service delivery. Parents?
We lost him again.
Yeah, it's real easy to press the wrong button. I got kicked out 6 times and logged back in. I didn't say anything.
Must be contagious. Okay.
Colleagues, if you don't have any more questions on this, we're ready to talk about food service delivery and distribution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please.
Okay, colleagues, today was a significant milestone. Our frontline workers on this issue of food service distribution to our students and families has been absolutely phenomenal. I believe it's a national best practice. I've studied a lot of what has gone on across the country. And of course, all of our students and children need the service at this time. But Buffalo has been thoughtful in its original model on this. The teams that have been on the front lines delivering the food to our children and families, we couldn't praise them enough. As Ms. Cotman said, they truly are frontline warriors, and there's over 500 of them. So tonight, we passed over 1 million meals have been distributed to our families and children. Just happened today, over 1 million. And that is significant by any measure. Jim Weimer and his team, who have led this work, and it's one of our core pieces of work during the pandemic, will talk to you in his usual brief, succinct way and tell you the core parts of this work and where we might expect to go this summer if we hear from the state government and the federal government.
So Jim Weimer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Dr. Cash.
Okay, sir. Appreciate you. Go ahead and deliver those main points to the board at this time and talk about your team and this work.
Thank you, Dr. Cash, and good evening, board members. As Dr. Cash said, I'm going to give you a brief update of what we have been doing since before the beginning of our hiatus from school. And so basically, we began with a distribution model that was designed using our community school system, plus adding additional school sites to cover the largest geographic footprint possible to be responsive to nutritional needs of BPS students in a safe and responsible manner. The model has 28 school sites for distribution and the food service commissary for food preparation and distribution. The sites have been open since March 17th and are open for distribution Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. From its inception on March 17th until last Friday, May 10th, the Buffalo District has provided over 1 million meals to the children of Buffalo. Each day of distribution, there are a total of 500 BPS employees working at the 28 sites and the commissary. Each site is staffed with an administrator, 2 nurses, a BPS security officer, and food service staff. Engineers and custodial staff are also on hand every day. Additionally, 10 off-duty BPD officers work each day at selected locations. The NFTA, the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, has provided at their expense 3 paratransit buses that deliver meals to approximately 900 BPS students. 35 daily volunteers, including a peacekeeper van, are delivering 500 meals to families who have requested. Additional support has been received from donations of personal protective equipment from the Independent Health Foundation, the Erie County Domino's Pizza Stores, the Independent Health Foundation with wellness bags. We are continuing next week the USDA Farm to Family produce boxes, and fresh fruit and vegetable programming is continuing to be provided to families. The Western New York Food Bank has also provided the district with 3,000 food backpacks that were distributed throughout all of our sites in April. Commendations go out to the entire group of BPS employees and partners, including the NFTA and Pastor Giles, and others who have volunteered in this difficult time. Additional recognition, and this is really important to note, and I know you're talking about recognizing people next week, but Bridget O'Brien Wood and her food service staff, Fred Wagstaff and his security staff, Barry Kirker with the engineers and custodians, Roy Adams with the service center staff, Al D'Amico, Cheryl Kennedy, and transportation staff, ASL's administrators, Dr. Tanja Williams. Special recognition to Dr. Ramona Reynolds, who has coordinated volunteers, all our nurses, and additionally Nate Kuzma. And finally, Dr. Cash, whose solid leadership through this crisis has focused on providing children with nutritious meals while ensuring the safety of all involved. Moving forward, regular distribution at 28 sites will continue until June 17th. Summer distribution has not been clarified by USDA or the New York State Education Department at this point, but the district is prepared to continue at our current locations. We will move forward with a plan and notify you of that as soon as we receive that clarification. Thank you. We'd be willing to answer any questions at this point.
It looks like Terrence has had another problem with his computer, and so we're going to wait for him to come back in. I have an initial question. Well, how many children does that million lunch program, how many mouths are we feeding under that program per day or per week or whatever in total? Because I like the number a million. I understand that. That's great. You've done a phenomenal job. Bridget and her staff and the entire team and everyone deserves to be commended. But how many children are we feeding? How many mouths are we feeding? Because I'm concerned about that, because typically do 30, close to 30,000 meals a day. Okay, and so it's concerned that, and particularly on today, because I've been speaking to principals about opportunity for gift cards that was presented to me. And I'm finding out the needs of these children are so great. And I'm just trying to find out how many mouths are we feeding? What does that equal? Because at one point we were given a figure of 15,000. I thought we had a number of 15,000 at the beginning of this. And I'm since hearing that the numbers are going down. What is that, Lou?
I thought it was 9,000 last I heard, Sharon.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're going down, and I'm just concerned that that we're missing some children. Terrence, you can take back over. Terrence, you had stepped out, and I just asked my question. I didn't mean to disrespect you.
Yes. President Bill Cobman, your concerns are the same. We have visited a lot of the food distribution centers ourselves and witnessed it. And thank you. We reached over 1 million meals. It shows the dedication that this district has and the members, especially Ms. Woods, who's been leading the charge on this and put her blood, sweat, and tears into the community. The concerns are we have within the community are who are getting the meals. And I understand, Dr. Cash, that you guys did a study of where the community schools should be placed at years ago, and used that model to distribute the foods. But we are finding food deserts within the community. We have food deserts and stores that's in the community that's considered a store, but they don't serve nutritious type meals out of the stores. The owners of these stores serve a lot of sugary type foods, candies, potato chips, sodas, juices, but it's nothing nutritious. We have very rarely to find somebody selling vegetables or fresh vegetables. Give 1,900 people's meals out of these type of markets, and down to, I believe, a little over 8,000 presently. And because of this, we have community groups and people saying that, asking if we can look to do a better job of trying to locate other school buildings that's of need. We have like a School 31, School 50, the Lydia T. Wright School. We have other schools that's doing a great job distributing the meals, but the areas that's really in poverty are not being serviced, and that's some of the concerns that we have. Parents can't afford to get on buses, or it's a health risk to get on the bus to catch a bus to get food. Some of the parents and children are living with elder parents or grandparents or caregivers, and they can't get out because of medical issues. And the children are not allowed to travel that far to go get the food. So what we are asking is to look at different avenues to try to open up. And I know that staffing is a problem. Some of the suggestions that came out was that maybe we can the times that we give out food at different locations, so that in the evenings, maybe some people can pick food up. I know you have a concern about safety and things like that, but there are security and nurses that's on task. So we can go on about this, but I don't want to try to try to pressure the district in any way of making no radical changes, but we're just looking to make minor changes to look at other locations that may be suffice for the community needs.
That's what I wanted to say.
President Cobman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in addition to the people who Mr. Weimer mentioned, I would also like to salute Jessica Walker Bauer and Sue Baldwin, who have been big ball players in this arena as well. They have been trying to work with communities groups to make sure additional food is sent out to our community. And I'd also like to shout out to the principals, because many of them are in their cars on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday delivering food. I know Patrick Cook does it. He goes all the way from where I am over to the west side to the Mariner Tower. So we want to make sure, Dr. Cash, next week that we get our frontline workers their kudos, because you know, a lot of people are getting extra money for not working during this period of time. They're making a profit with that extra $600 unemployment over here. So we've got people that are coming to work and still having to deal with the same issues that we all are dealing with. So I just want to make sure that those people get their shouts out, because they're going beyond the call of duty in a lot of respects or whatever. But I'm concerned about how many mouths we're feeding. And then I just want to know that, because if there's anything that I can do to help additional people to pick up food or to deliver food, I'm willing to do that. We're starting to go down, and I already know we, at the pace that we're going, we're not gonna, the children who need it the most are just not receiving it. So that's just my concern. I don't want to, fact that we've done $1 billion, that's something to be proud of. But I'm just concerned about how many mouths we're actually feeding. So if you don't have that answer,
10
I'm
to
sure you can
12,000
share it.
per day. 10 to 12,000 per day.
Okay, we were doing that, but I understand it's less than that now. It's down to 9 or less. Yes, it is.
10 to 12,000 this week, and we went back up to 46,000 today.
Are you
So
doing
it
an average,
fluctuates.
Dr. Cash?
No,
Are you
I'm telling you,
averaging?
we went down for a couple of days to 32,000, and today we're back up to 46,000 today. So it fluctuates. I don't know. There's a lot of partners in this with us delivering food as well. I always look at data. If I have data, then I will look to see if it's a need. But we haven't heard these concerns that you're talking about. Turn them on to us. Tell them to let us know.
Well, I know tomorrow that School 61 is addressing a need in their community. They've collected food to give out food from 10 to 2 tomorrow. So there's definitely a need for people to be for additional food in this community.
We hear about it. We'll address it. I haven't heard about it. Let me know.
Okay, Ms. McCosey?
Thank you. So I am, I'm not echoing concerns as of like how, because I understand we're all trying to figure out what to do from one second to the next. But my question is, with the data that we have and what you're saying, Dr. Cash, collecting data, if there are certain schools that you're recognizing tends to stay at like a baseline as opposed to more folks coming, that they tend to stay on, you know, either an average or it tends to drop every now and then. What are the red flags and what's the game plan for after that? Do we have like other maybe centers or other partners that we're able to distribute foods at their location, or are we just really concentrating on our community schools? I do have not the same concerns that, you know, I have concerns that people are not being fed, but it's more along the lines of not us offering, it's along the lines of them being able to get to it. So do we have like, you know, say, just using the West, for example, even though Lafayette is a community school, 45 is right there, there's the next school is quite a ways down. So what if there's, you know, a gap where people can't get to one to the other, and that is an area where you recognize the data shows that not as many folks are coming? Do we have
Well,
offered
we added 8 more schools, colleague. We had in all community schools, but we have 28. So we added 7 additional schools to try to fill in those various places that look like there might be a gap. And then we have hundreds of volunteers. The volunteers take the food to places where they weren't able to get there. All they have to do is let us know.
So maybe it's a matter of communication.
We think
Maybe it's a matter of that.
maybe. We think we have a good model, a sound model, and there's a lot of partners that want to help, and they are helping. And if folks are in that situation where their children aren't getting the food, because that's my first concern, then I want to know how we can get it to them, and we will take it to them. That's what the volunteers do. We'll take it to those families. We'll take it to those households.
Can I ask you this then? When you, where you have identified and you opened up these extra 7 schools, which that's awesome. I knew we opened some, but I didn't know it was 7, so I appreciate that effort. And this is what I'm talking about. The work is being done, and now that this is a public meeting, people know. But can we, as these things come up, even if it's a text, because not everybody's on email, make sure that, you know, it's something I'll post on Facebook. Like I just literally went to Facebook and put 1 million meals have been served to date, Dr. Kreiner Cash. You know what I mean? I put that up just now. I want to be able to let the community know that there are places that maybe they would have a closer access to, and we have opened up 7 new schools.
We
I'm not
have
sure
the
if that's
map.
communicated.
We have the map of where they are in the city, and you should post that. We've had that for quite some time, so we'll be happy to get that out to you right away, and all of you should post that up on your Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And me?
Anything else, colleagues?
Larry Scott.
Yeah, I just want to commend Mr. Weimer and every single person that has helped to get our families food. I've been to some of the sites. I've delivered some meals to families. I've seen them in action, and I think they all should be commended as, you know, potentially putting themselves at risk. All the hard work that's being done to get our families food. And I think there are opportunities if families can't get food, they need to reach out. We need to hear about it. I found out about a daycare that was providing daycare to 20 of our kids, our Buffalo kids, whose parents are essential care workers, and they needed meals. And within a day, with the help of Mr. Weimer and Dr. Reynolds, within 24 hours, that daycare was receiving meals. So we need to communicate and work together. And if we sign me up, if there are families that aren't getting food, sign me up. I'll deliver it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. We appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. By no means are we trying to minimize the efforts of this district and Dr. Cash and the planning of your administrators of your food program. We just listen to other members in the community that lives in food deserts, and it's very difficult for elderly people and kids during this epidemic to travel any distance to go get food. And we know that there's various buildings and schools, maybe a drop-off sites that we can work with our drivers. I know that we work with the NFTA, which is doing a wonderful job with delivering food. And also Pastor Giles, he's one of the people I recommended that we brought in. And I had over 200 people that wanted to volunteer. And we were sending them all to Dr. Reynolds, who did a wonderful job signing up. And there was a number of people who said that we have full staff, that we don't need anymore, who can still come out and help out some days, you know, that we can reach out to. So I'm glad that we live in a community that's had the love for one another, that wants to help make sure that everybody, you know, receive a balanced meal every single day. And this is one of my great to rise you know, what are we going to do? I think that that these initial things, that these primary things that we need to live, you know, are being done. And thank you for all the violence. We never expect anything like this to happen, and I know that this is strenuous work, and I'm sure that we all, each and every one of us, will get out there and get out there and work. Checking to see if any more hands are raised at this time, which we don't. And also, Dr. Cash, one of the other things that I put on the list that didn't make the list somehow, but I wanted to ask you for a report on, was the section 6 findings, because it's very important right now. And the reason why I'm asking is because right now section 6 is we don't know what's going on next year and what's happening. We asked for a report. I personally asked for a report about the findings, and the board actually voted so that I can actually report from the section 6. And what was the findings from the meetings? The report actually, the board actually voted that I could be in on the meetings to define the direction that we're going in. I know that in the past, some things had happened, and we want to make sure that we solidify a good and prosperous future with our Section 6 sports program. Some of the things why I'm asking this is because I know that was form that needed to be submitted. It was deadlines, you know, before that they stated that wasn't met. We want to make sure that those were being done, and that the meetings were being attended. Also, we have the NCAA eligibility center that our kids that's going to college, and they're supposed to right now be working on the AP classes. They're supposed to successfully complete their core courses. I'm not sure where we're at with that right now. Checking the GPA for the minimum of 2.0 for their core courses, and also making sure that they have taken their SATs or ACTs so that they can qualify for the clearinghouse program, the NCAA eligibility. And I'm not quite sure what the report is on that, who's working with the kids to make sure that they're can apply for NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III colleges, and make sure that they meet the demands for it. I know we had a lot of groups in the community. One was the Coalition for Fair and Free Equitable Athletics, who received national support from the NCAA, who's backing them to make sure that these things are being done. And where's the report, and making sure our kids have all the opportunities that all the other kids have all over the country. So I'm calling about the report, where we stand with that, and so that we can give reference back and make sure that our kids are getting the proper classes and courses this year throughout the epidemic, so that they can meet the minimum requirements.
This wasn't an agenda item, right?
It wasn't. I placed it as an agenda item, but for somehow it didn't make the sheet. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered this this week.
Well, you're asking two different things. One is Section 6, and the other is whether the athletes are getting all that they need to be ready for the next level. May have to know more about what you're asking there. The Section 6 is going great. I told you from the beginning how this was gonna play out. You had your demonstration. You brought the political attention to it. That was great. And then I said, I got it from here. And I went down and met with the Section 6 head.
But
and I told them what I was going to do and what I expected. And then I assigned Cecily Owen and Michael House to be our representatives. And so we are in the best shape we've been in 15 years with Section 6. All of our teams are in, all of our combined teams I have reviewed and approved and signed off on. We have 4 major representation on the athletic council for Section 6. We've never had 4 members being represented, and in all of those meetings that they have on a regular basis, all the schedules are set for next year in terms of the sports, and the fall schedule is set. It's in the best shape that we've ever done and ever had. We have a survey that's out. We paid our dues. well in advance, and they were appreciative of that. And I think I'm very pleased about where we are with that particular issue. So I don't know what the other part is that you're asking about. Say Yes helps our students fill out FAFSA forms and get ready to apply for scholarships and get ready for college and that kind of thing. They're still doing that, and they do that on a regular basis. Our guidance counselors are helping our students. We're working very closely with our seniors. They're a priority for us right now. I want every senior to graduate who is a senior. So we pulled out all the stops with getting our kids prepared for graduating and then for next level.
Okay. I know that due to the COVID that a lot of things have changed, and but the recommendations and the credentials for NCAA eligibility hasn't changed. We called over there and spoke with the NCAA myself, and those things haven't changed. So just to make sure that the students are, even though Regents credits are not mandatory here in New York State, but there's some courses in AP classes that they have to take to qualify for NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III scholarships and classes, they have to do. I haven't seen any report about the ACT or SATs that the kids who are taking the tests, to qualify. And I asked about it before, and I haven't received an answer. So I just wanted to know, waiting on emails, it's the end of the year. And I know you said that the guidance counselors and teachers are working on with them with this, but we haven't received anything to clarify this point.
Well, ask a specific question. Ask a specific question, and we'll answer it. We'll send it to you in writing. We'll send it to you in writing.
Well, I have a specific question.
I have two hands. I have two hands up.
Thank you.
First was Mrs. Muscozy, and then Ms. Belton-Cotman.
So I just want to make a comment that I do appreciate and I understand that all of the vacancies and the attention to Section 6 is where it should be. I do want to state that we have everything in place going forward for the next year. I am myself, and I know some community members are worried based on what's going to happen in the future years, right? So the year after next is kind of where the concern is. So my only ask of you is not, definitely I'm very appreciative for where you've taken this to date. I just want to make sure that there's more communication around what is happening at those tables, especially to the board, because that was kind of the disconnect from the beginning. Is some folks in the city know that if Section 8 is mentioned or Section 6 is mentioned, that it immediately raises a red flags for those who have been like really entrenched in the work and how this really affects our city. And that's where that community push came from, and that's where everybody started coming together. So if there's any, maybe doubts or anything that Ms. Owens or Mr. House seems to feel might be tension, let us know, because those folks are the ones, the community standing behind us really got the job done. And once, even if it's something that we know we can fix internally, we need to make sure that they're always put on notice. And they always know that we're coming at them. And it's not just in the district's hands, it's in the community's hands, what they do moving forward. Because everybody has relationships, and I have relationships outside of this district, and some of these school districts don't really view this as anything but just a stepping stone until they get their hands into us in the next couple of years. And that's been stated. We're just shutting them up for the next couple of years. So if there's any tension, I just ask that we're all made aware of it so we can reignite these people to make sure that we never be put in that position again. And I mean, I just fear for it, because it's such a huge part, as we saw, of what our students, look forward to. So I just want to put that out there.
It's in a good place right now. We'll keep you posted.
Okay, let me clarify that that we do have friends on the Section 6 that they look out for the city of Buffalo in the residential. When I say this, I'm not referring to all members of the Section 6. So we did have people that did call them report personally the things that was happening that was going to happen to our district. So I want to make sure to clarify that when I mention this, I'm not talking about all aspects of the Section 6. We just want to make sure that we have a smooth pathway in the future for our children to have an equal and equitable chance of education, sports, and to move forward, just like any other child in this country would, to go to a reputable college, and play sports, which might be an enhancement for their lives. Now, with saying that, I would like to go to President Topman.
The ask is, can we have it in writing that their intent is not to kick us out in the future? That is the ask, okay? They put it in writing that their intent was to do it for 1 year only. That's what I'm concerned about seeing, okay? Because when certain people in the community approach me and ask me and tell me that we have to fix this problem, that it is not definitely fixed, this is why we want to address this. So the ask is, can we get it in writing that their intent is not to ostracize us in the future? That's all. Because what they may say to you and what they may do is different. We want to know in writing what it is. That's it.
We'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I do have one more hand up, and it goes to, it just came down. I apologize. Okay, I think we all clear. Any more questions pertaining to anything before a summary? I think that in conclusion that we had a very, very great committee meetings today. I think that that we had a lot of things on the table and a lot of things to address that came past, and that we can actually find some resolution on. With Jennifer's committee, I believe that working together towards this and everybody doing their due diligence and their part, whatever we can do to move forward, I believe that as a board, we'll be great and powerful. We can do great things together, working along with the administration and Dr. Cash. The only thing, some of the questions that we had today was due to a lack of transparency, which I would like to see a better relationship with. Respect, with this administration and the things that that they're doing, that they're working for. This epidemic is hard on all of us, and but we also have goals that we have to reach. And we have constituents and stakeholders that we have to answer to. So we just want to make sure that those questions are that can be answered, that we all could feel comfortable answering them, and that we did a wonderful and great job. And I'd like to thank you all.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe.
Good night.
Bless.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night.